In year 21 of the Solsario calendar, the kingdom of Granvald stands as a grim, blood-soaked fortress. It is humanity's absolute last bastion, but a relentless horde of monstrous beasts is already knocking at the gates. The defending soldiers grip their weapons with trembling hands, clinging to a desperately faint sliver of hope. One terrified guard clutches his pendant, silently praying to survive a nightmare that deep down he knows is unwinnable. Suddenly, the blood-red sky darkens as massive black dragons descend with deafening roars. Before anyone can react, a blinding beam of apocalyptic energy obliterates the fortress defenses in an instant. The impenetrable walls crumble like cheap clay, sending massive boulders crashing down into the rising smoke. With the barricades gone, the demonic army floods the courtyard, effortlessly trampling the fragile human resistance underfoot. A towering minotaur snatches up a screaming guard, treating the poor guy like nothing more than a mid-battle snack. Total slaughter ensues as the remaining survivors realize their unavoidable, gruesome fate has finally caught up to them. The burning fortress becomes a literal graveyard, as the relentless demon assault pushes humanity to the brink of extinction. Desperate to save whoever is left, the surviving guards drag their mangled comrades into a burning cathedral. Inside, the makeshift hospital is overflowing with battered troops clinging to their last shreds of life. Cutting through the despair, a young healer named Will channels intense green mana to mend their broken bodies. Sweating profusely, our boy barks at the guards to keep bringing in the wounded as fast as possible. Suddenly, his frantic aide rushes in, begging the master healer to evacuate before the breached gates completely fall. The assistant pleads that a top-tier support mage like him has no business dying on the crumbling front lines, but Will just shoots him a furious glare, absolutely disgusted by the cowardly idea of abandoning his dying men. Gritting his teeth, he vows to single-handedly prevent humanity's wipeout as long as he has mana left to heal. His stubborn drive stems from a haunting memory of a fallen comrade who once entrusted the world to his power. He still sees the bloody smile of his dying mentor, passing on the title of Greatest Healer. His tragic flashback is suddenly cut short when a frantic voice screams out his name. Will snaps back to reality just as two battered soldiers drag a casualty through the archway. The troops are absolutely dumbfounded, realizing the bleeding man is their commander with a severed arm. The guards desperately lay the general down, warning that if their leader dies, the defense collapses. Stepping up to the plate, our boy flares his green mana and confidently vows to save him. With a fierce glare, Will declares that saving hopeless lives is exactly why he stayed behind. He immediately presses his hands over the gruesome stump, channeling a massive surge of healing magic. The sheer force of his spell creates a blinding shockwave of green energy that knocks everyone back. Right before their eyes, the general's missing limb miraculously begins to regenerate from thin air. The glowing green mana solidifies, completely restoring the commander's severed hand without a single scar. As the magical shockwave dissipates across the floor, the surrounding guards watch in absolute awe. Stirring from the brink of death, the veteran slowly opens his eyes to the blinding light. The troops immediately erupt into cheers, praising our boy's unbelievable talent as their leader sits up. Smiling warmly, Will promises to always patch him up, confidently claiming humanity's victory is finally guaranteed. But instead of celebrating, the commander just stares at his flawless new fingers in utter disbelief. Suddenly, a dark realization flashes through the veteran's eyes as his pupils shrink in pure horror. Without a second of hesitation, he winds back his freshly healed arm and clocks Will right in the jaw. Clenching his trembling fist, the commander angrily mutters that the kid just made a massive mistake. Catching his balance against the dumbfounded guards, our boy rubs his bruised cheek, completely clueless about his mistake. The veteran furiously orders our boy to shut his mouth, his eyes glowing with unhinged rage. Trembling with a mix of anger and sheer exhaustion, the commander tightly grips his heavy broadsword. Still sprawled on the stone floor, the young healer stares up in absolute, terrified confusion. With a violent thrust, the veteran buries his blade inches from Will's face, making him flinch hard. Screaming in pure agony, the commander demands to know why this cursed arm won't just let him die. He bitterly asks how a kid hiding in the rear could ever understand their absolute despair. Looming over the terrified boy, the broken man cries out that he just wanted his suffering to end. Gesturing to the battered troops, the veteran declares that absolutely no one wants to keep fighting. The crushing weight of reality finally hits our boy, leaving him completely paralyzed by the horrifying truth. Glancing around, he sees the exhausted infantrymen hanging their heads, their shattered spirits confirming the tragic words. The aide continues bandaging the battered troops, completely oblivious to the young healer's shattering worldview. Staring into the reflection of the blade, Will desperately wonders if saving lives was entirely pointless. His eyes widen in the shadows as he realizes all his grueling sacrifices might mean absolutely nothing. The commander's bitter words cut deep, declaring he is completely done suffering just because Will keeps healing him. Turning his back on our boy, the veteran coldly tells him to fight this doomed war himself. Panic sets in as Will remembers the cruelest rule of this world. Healers possess zero offensive magic. He screams after the retreating commander, knowing full well that without frontline fighters, the stronghold is dead. Suddenly, a massive black dragon unleashes a blinding roar of searing energy right at the gates. The fortress walls violently detonate with a deafening boom, sending massive chunks of stone crashing down. Crushed beneath the heavy rubble, the once proud general coughs up blood and weakly begs Will to run. The life completely drains from the veteran's eyes as the crushing weight of the rubble finishes him off. A blinding shockwave of fiery destruction forces our boy to throw his arms up just to survive the blast. Trembling in the heat, a horrifying realization finally dawns on him as he stares at the absolute carnage. A colossal red dragon roars triumphantly, proving just how terrifying the monsters slaughtering his comrades truly are. A bitter smile creeps across his face as he admits he spent this entire war hiding safely behind others. Clutching his chest in pure frustration, he curses every single second he wasted, mastering his trash-tier support skills. He remembers how his incredible gift for mending wounds once brought him so much innocent joy. That same talent even earned him an audience with the king, who crowned him the greatest healer alive. But now, gritting his teeth in agonizing regret, he wishes he had learned how to actually fight and kill. Driven by sheer desperation, his trembling hand grabs a jagged piece of rubble from the devastated floor. He charges straight at the towering beast, looking like an absolute speck against its massive, fiery maw. With his final breath, our boy desperately wishes he could just rewind time and fix his pathetic mistakes. But reality is cruel, and the monster's colossal jaws snap shut, instantly swallowing him whole. Everything fades to pitch black, as the last drops of his blood scatter into the void. Suddenly, the crimson blood shifts into a glowing blue droplet, rippling across a mysterious pool of water. His eyes snap wide open in pure shock, completely dumbfounded that he is somehow still breathing. Gasping for air, he shoots up in a cozy bed, greeted by the peaceful morning sun instead of hellfire. He stares blankly around the pristine room, utterly confused as to how he survived the massacre. Spotting a familiar wax-sealed admissions letter on his desk, a crazy thought suddenly crosses his mind. Sweating bullets, he realizes he somehow regressed 5 years into the past, back where his miserable journey began. He remembers this exact day in the 16th year, right before he became the world's greatest healer. Staring at his admission letter to the prestigious healing academy, he tries to process this impossible miracle. Gritting his teeth, he realizes that if the universe actually granted his dying wish, he cannot waste it. With a firm grip, he ruthlessly crushes the paper, completely rejecting his old path of standing behind others. Our boy makes a hard vow to enroll in Schwarz Academia instead, the absolute peak of offensive magic. Armed with his future memories and mastered healing arts, he knows he can rewrite this doomed timeline. Channeling his glowing green mana, he plans to step onto the front lines himself and save the world. But to pull off this insane plan, he first needs to secure a spot in that legendary academy. The school is famous for its ruthless curriculum, packing massive halls with the kingdom's most ambitious mages. Their elite instructors can forge absolutely anyone into a top-tier destructive force, and he desperately needs that firepower. He remembers a legendary warrior from his past life, who also graduated from that very institution. The problem is, the academy's destructive techniques are heavily guarded secrets, strictly reserved for enrolled students. Pacing his room, our boy realizes a pure healer applying for a combat school is completely unheard of. He recalls a rumor that wealthy nobles often bribe the administration to accept their trash-tier kids. Staring out the window, he bitterly regrets not being able to bring his massive future fortune back. Sweating bullets, he calculates that grinding as a low-level healer won't earn him enough cash before the deadline. Suddenly, the door creaks open, snapping him out of his intense brainstorming session. A familiar voice calls out, and he is completely dumbfounded to see his older sister standing there. Tears well up in his eyes as the reality of his regression hits, realizing she is actually alive. Quickly rubbing his eyes, he plays it off as dust, and warmly greets the family he lost forever. Will smiles warmly, wishing his sister a good morning as he basks in the peaceful moment. Staring at her, he vows to use his regressed healing magic to prevent her tragic fate this time. A sudden spark of genius hits our boy as he realizes his powers can save everyone he previously lost. He excitedly grabs her hands, thanking her for the sudden inspiration while she just stares back completely bewildered. Dashing out the door, he promises to explain everything later while she playfully reminds him to return for dinner. His target is the Magic Academy Alliance, a shadowy council of elite mages dictating the kingdom's entire magical curriculum. At the very top sits the Alliance chairman, who also happens to be the headmaster of the prestigious Schwarz Academia. But recently, this legendary headmaster completely vanished from the public eye, locking himself away behind his heavily guarded estate. Deep inside the manor, the old mage keeps a grim, sleepless vigil by a dimly lit bedside. Turns out, he abandoned his duties to watch over a mysterious blonde woman suffering from a severe, unknown illness. The old headmaster gently holds the frail girl's hand, whispering her name as she struggles to breathe. He bitterly apologizes for another failed treatment, swearing he will find someone capable of curing her mysterious illness. In Will's past life, the desperate chairman spent every waking moment by his granddaughter's side. Sadly, the primitive healing magic of that era was completely useless against her worsening condition. The poor girl eventually died, leaving the old man broken, but Will refuses to let history repeat itself. Perched confidently on the windowsill, our boy interrupts the grim silence and offers to take the job. Hopping into the room, Will is slightly dumbfounded when the old mage immediately recognizes him as a scholarship student. The chairman admits Will's healing talents are famous, though he never expected the kid to break in like a burglar. Will just rubs his neck with a nervous laugh, realizing that dying once definitely made him a lot bolder. Getting serious, he knows they have to act fast, because time is running out for both of them. Stepping up to the bed, Will confidently declares that he can cure the dying girl. But the old man isn't easily swayed, narrowing his eyes and demanding to know his true motives. Waving off the suspicion, Will begs for immediate permission, warning that the disease is progressing rapidly. A drop of sweat rolls down his face as he realizes just how close she is to death. The headmaster's piercing gaze locks onto him, silently weighing the young healer's bold claims. Swallowing his nerves, Will finally gets the green light as the old mage challenges him to prove it. Taking a seat beside the unconscious girl, Will prepares his mana while the chairman watches closely. Our boy shoots a nervous glance across the bed, feeling the crushing weight of the old man's aura. The headmaster radiates pure killing intent, proving exactly why he runs an offensive magic academy. Pushing the fear aside, Will takes a deep breath and gently grasps the girl's frail hand. Will unleashes a brilliant wave of green mana, pouring everything he has into the dying girl. Even though his regression sapped his total magical power, our boy still remembers the exact healing formulas. He knows the cure for the deadly Zora disease won't be officially invented for another 2 years. But with sheer willpower, he forces his current mana to replicate the future miracle. The suffocating tension breaks as the blonde girl finally flutters her eyes open, leaving Will sighing in relief. Flashing a warm smile, he gently warns her to take it easy, since her stamina is completely drained. Flustered by her handsome savior, she immediately shoots up in bed, her face burning bright red. The menacing headmaster instantly drops his guard, rushing to his granddaughter's side to check if it is real. Marie beams with a radiant smile, admitting she hasn't felt this incredibly healthy in years. Hearing those words, the terrifying old mage completely breaks down, tears welling up in his eyes. Will sits back with a calm smile, quietly observing the heartwarming reunion. From outside the moonlit window, the old man tightly embraces his precious granddaughter in pure relief. Later in the drawing room, the deeply humbled headmaster offers our boy his endless gratitude. Swearing to grant any reward, the old mage is completely caught off guard by Will's simple proposition. Will confidently explains that his top-tier healing abilities mean he has absolutely nothing left to learn. With burning determination, he firmly requests immediate enrollment into the prestigious Schwarz Academia. The headmaster is utterly dumbfounded, questioning why a peerless healer would throw his life away at a combat school. But Will doesn't flinch for a second, firmly stating that he knows exactly what he is getting into. Staring into the boy's unwavering dark eyes, the old man recognizes the sheer grit of a true warrior. Rising from his seat, the headmaster realizes his absolute authority was meant for this exact moment. Will flashes a confident smile, promising he will absolutely make his wild ambition a reality. The headmaster firmly shakes our boy's hand, officially approving his outrageous enrollment into the combat academy. Meanwhile, a grumpy instructor sits in his dark office, cursing the crafty old headmaster's reckless decision. Reviewing the paperwork, the teacher scoffs at the very idea of a pampered healer surviving their brutal curriculum. Soon enough, the highly anticipated entrance ceremony kicks off at the grand estate of Schwarz Academia. The old headmaster stands tall before the fresh recruits, ready to forge the next generation of warriors. This elite boarding school is the absolute pinnacle of offensive magic, boasting massive training grounds for its students. It even houses a colossal library packed with ancient knowledge to push their magical limits. With legendary alumni backing them and endless kingdom support, the academy breeds nothing but top-tier monsters. As the headmaster gazes over the crowd, Will stands ready to exploit this perfect environment for combat magic. Will knows the path ahead is brutal for a healer, but he is ready to master offensive magic. The horrific memories of his comrades being slaughtered by that massive dragon still burn in his mind. Fueled by that past trauma, our boy vows to completely rewrite his tragic fate. But reality hits hard once the actual combat classes finally begin. Standing before a training dummy, the strict instructor orders him to demonstrate his raw firepower. Will channels his mana, summoning a fiery magic circle to unleash a devastating blast. He puts everything into the strike, panting heavily from the sheer effort. Yet the grand attack just fizzles out into a pathetic little puff of smoke. The instructor smugly declares him a failure, while the other students snicker at the trash tier display. Banished from the main lessons, Will is ordered to practice alone until he can actually dent a target. Desperate to improve, Will begs the strict instructor to actually teach him the proper casting technique. But the bespectacled teacher just adjusts his glasses, scoffing that training a healer is completely pointless. When our boy pleads to at least study theory, the instructor coldly denies him library access entirely. Suddenly, a malicious grin flashes from a nearby blonde classmate who clearly has other plans. Without warning, a scorching blast of magic slams right into Will's unprotected back. The sheer force of the cowardly sneak attack sends him face-planting hard into the dirt. Dumbfounded, Will looks back as the blonde jerk bursts into laughter, mocking his trash-tier reflexes. The bully proudly declares that this elite offensive academy has zero room for defenseless weaklings. Leaning in close, he viciously whispers that getting blasted was entirely Will's own fault. To make matters worse, the instructor completely agrees, suggesting our boy belongs in a basic healing school. The blonde jerk cackles maniacally, telling Will to go cry to the gentle healers for comfort. Still sprawled in the dirt, our boy can only glare as the mocking laughter echoes around him. Later that night, Will sits alone in the empty courtyard, letting out a heavy sigh of pure frustration. Leaning back, he realizes there is absolutely zero sign he will ever learn offensive magic here. He closes his eyes, fully aware that changing his doomed fate was always going to be an uphill battle. The core issue is that mages must convert their spirit's mana through complex formulas to cast spells. While offensive magic requires volatile active mana for destruction, healers are cursed with strictly passive energy. However, since this elite academy forges mages from scratch, a method to refine active mana must exist. With his flawless mana control, Will was certain he could learn to convert his passive energy, but he never expected the arrogant elites to completely ban him from even stepping foot inside a classroom. Will refuses to throw in the towel, knowing he has to figure this out somehow. He remembers a legendary mage who also started with pathetic mana but refined it right here. Realizing that wandering around aimlessly is useless, our boy considers sneaking into the restricted library. Suddenly, a sharp voice demands to know why he is loitering around the campus so late. He freezes as the sound of clicking heels echoes through the crisp night air. Turning around, he is completely dumbfounded to see a stunning woman with flowing silver hair. He instantly recognizes her as Veronica, a legendary figure from his previous, blood-soaked life. Back in the doomed timeline, she was an absolute powerhouse who slaughtered enemies on the front lines. Tragically, he was forced to watch this first-class offensive mage bleed out in his arms. Seeing her alive fills him with overwhelming nostalgia as she grips her iconic magic sword. But before he can even process the reunion, she draws her glowing blade with deadly intent. Sweating bullets, our boy throws his hands up as she coldly labels him a suspicious intruder. Keeping her guard up, she demands to know if he is causing trouble or just training. Realizing she is way more terrifying than any academy bully, he frantically stammers out an excuse. Her blade slides back into its sheath with a sharp click, leaving him sighing in massive relief. Gathering his courage, he nervously asks if she is the legendary Veronica he remembers so well. Her eyes narrow instantly, scolding him for addressing a superior with such casual disrespect. He completely freezes, suddenly remembering that in his past life, they were practically the same age. She proudly explains that her monstrous talent allowed her to skip grades and become a professor immediately. Chuckling nervously, he realizes that a powerhouse of her caliber dominating the academic ladder makes perfect sense. Will realizes this unexpected encounter is actually the perfect opportunity. Since she is a prodigy, he figures she might be exactly who he needs to learn offensive magic. Eager to level up, our boy immediately begs to enroll in her class. He practically demands to know what hoops he has to jump through to attend. But Veronica awkwardly admits she does not actually teach any courses, since she skipped all her regular classes. Instead, the academy made her an assistant instructor to answer questions, hoping her young age would make her approachable. She lets out a dry laugh, mentioning that absolutely no one has come to her for help yet. Will sweats, knowing the other students are terrified of a professor who draws her blade so aggressively. Realizing he has her undivided attention, he eagerly asks if she is willing to tutor him. Without wasting a second, he asks how a trash-tier healer can possibly master offensive magic. Veronica narrows her eyes, noting that there is something incredibly strange about his mana flow. She quickly realizes he is the infamous new student everyone on campus has been gossiping about. Dumbfounded that she knows him, he listens as she admits a combat-focused healer is completely unheard of. Our boy pushes back, mentioning a rumored academy technique to refine active mana, which she confirms exists. His face lights up with hope, thinking he finally found his golden ticket to getting stronger, but she immediately crushes his dreams, bluntly stating that offensive magic is still completely impossible for him. Confused, he asks why, and she explains that his body is already overflowing with passive healing mana. Any active mana he tries to refine would just instantly dissolve into his massive passive reserves, ruining the formulas. Devastated, he asks if it is truly hopeless, and she admits she knows absolutely no workarounds. Cursing his failed plan, our boy refuses to quit, vowing to just invent his own damn method instead. Thanking her for the harsh truth, our boy bows and decides to figure this out alone. But before he can even take a step, his former comrade orders him to halt. Her intense gaze locks onto him as she drops a bombshell, revealing there actually is a loophole. Completely dumbfounded, he freezes in his tracks and begs her to explain this impossible method. Drawing her glowing blade, she gives a basic lesson, stating that iron swords are forged to kill. She then points to a nearby wooden bench, noting its obvious purpose is just for sitting. But with terrifying ease, she lifts the heavy bench one-handed, proving it can still crush skulls. Dropping it back down, she explains that an object's original purpose doesn't restrict how you wield it. Raising her gloved hand, the silver-haired professor notes that the exact same logic applies to human bodies. To prove her point, she gently caresses his cheek, leaving our boy completely flustered by the sudden touch. But before he can process the moment, she ruthlessly smacks him back, proving a gentle touch can also inflict pain. As our boy groans in pain, she casually apologizes and reiterates that anything becomes a weapon if wielded correctly. The gears finally start turning in his head, as he realizes she is talking about weaponizing his healing magic. Seeing the realization dawn on his face, the silver-haired professor gives him a proud, knowing smile. He kicks himself for never thinking of this before, but she explains it all comes down to innate mana differences. Normally, offensive and healing magic are like oil and water, naturally repelling each other due to their conflicting natures. Leaning in closer, she notes that his situation is completely different from the standard rules of magic. A fierce green aura erupts around him as she reveals his mana is no longer that of a pure healer. Staring at his trembling hands, he wonders if his miraculous regression somehow mutated his magical core without him noticing. Leveling her glowing blade right at his chest, she challenges him to finally recognize his own hidden potential. She urges him to tap into his aggressive passion to unlock his true power. Sweating under the pressure of her blade, he realizes his healing magic could literally shatter enemies. The very next day, the academy students gather in the courtyard for their practical combat lessons. Standing in formation, our boy cannot stop thinking about the professor's insane advice from last night. Her brutal combat examples were definitely unorthodox, but they completely shattered his old magical limitations. He wonders why a top-tier combat mage like her lacks the usual prejudice against healers. His thoughts are cut short when the bitter instructor rudely barks at him, refusing to use his name. She announces one-on-one mock battles, forcing him to participate just to make up the odd numbers. Looking completely unfazed, he listens as she coldly states that his lack of offensive magic is his own funeral. Flashing a sinister grin behind her glasses, the spiteful teacher reveals she has already rigged the matchups. The spiteful instructor pairs our boy up with Ulpus, setting the stage for a completely unfair fight. Will sighs at the blatantly rigged setup, while the bitter teacher snickers in the background. This blonde noble is always surrounded by lackeys, acting like he owns the entire academy. Despite his trash-tier personality, Will admits the guy actually possesses genuine talent for offensive magic. The arrogant noble laughs maniacally, asking if healing magic can fix the absolute humiliation he is about to deliver. Forcing a polite smile, our boy tries to keep his composure against the relentless mocking. His past self might have ignored the insults, but right now, he is absolutely furious. Deciding to test his new combat theories, he interrupts the instructor before she can force him to forfeit. Raising a single finger, he agrees that his lack of offensive magic makes this class a waste of time. With a confident smirk, he raises the stakes, declaring he will drop out of the academy entirely if he loses. The corrupt instructor smirks, thinking this is the perfect excuse to finally kick him out. But our boy counters with his own condition, demanding the right to attend regular classes if he wins. Ulpus bursts into maniacal laughter, mocking the frail healer for clinging to impossible fantasies. The arrogant noble sneers, admitting he prefers it this way since crushing a hopeful spirit is highly entertaining. Realizing this banter is dragging on, the instructor pushes up her glasses and agrees to the terms. She orders both students to take their positions in the academy courtyard for the showdown. Throwing her hand into the air, she officially kicks off the hopelessly rigged duel. Ulpus instantly crosses his arms, channeling a massive surge of golden mana around his body. With a sharp whoosh, he summons a deadly ring of glowing magical daggers right out of thin air. Thrusting his arm forward, the blonde brat boasts that his knife creation magic will skewer our boy alive. Ulpus unleashes a blazing barrage of blades, mocking the frail healer for being completely defenseless without offensive magic. Unfazed by the deadly storm, our boy simply brings his hands together in a perfectly calm stance. A brilliant green magic circle materializes between his palms as he taps into his massive reserves of passive mana. His dark eyes suddenly erupt with a piercing emerald glow, signaling the activation of his true power. Moving with impossible speed, he effortlessly weaves through the fiery projectiles, leaving nothing but afterimages in his wake. The arrogant noble is left completely dumbfounded, unable to comprehend how a trash-tier dropout dodged his ultimate strike. Will knows his healing magic is pure life manipulation, allowing him to weaponize it into a terrifying offensive form. Refusing to accept reality, the blonde brat furiously channels more mana, screaming that it was just a lucky fluke. But our boy instantly floods his cells with healing energy, triggering a massive physical enhancement that supercharges his muscles. Before the noble can even blink, Will closes the gap and casually presses a wooden blade against his throat. Stepping back, Will effortlessly swats away a sudden volley of magical projectiles as if swatting flies. The deflected energy blades clatter uselessly against the dirt right at our boy's feet. Catching one of the glowing constructs, Will casually remarks that the timing is absolutely perfect. With a swift motion, he grabs the hilt of the manifested energy blade to use for himself. Flashing a confident smirk, he mockingly announces that he will be borrowing the weapon for a moment. He grips the radiant sword tightly, ready to show this arrogant noble the true gap between them. The watching lackeys are completely baffled, wondering how a trash-tier healer just unleashed offensive magic. Will just smirks to himself, amused that these supposed elites cannot even recognize weaponized life force. Humiliated and dripping with sweat, the blonde noble grits his teeth in pure, unadulterated frustration, desperately claiming he was just holding back. The brat summons a massive barrage of flaming daggers. Refusing to accept that an elite offensive mage could lose to a trash-tier healer, Ulpus unleashes hell. But our boy moves like a blur, effortlessly parrying the blazing barrage with his stolen blade. The deadly projectiles crash harmlessly into the stone floor, leaving the blonde noble completely speechless. Pushed to the brink of humiliation, the desperate brat gathers an insane amount of mana between his hands. He molds the fiery energy together, manifesting a colossal, blazing broadsword that dwarfs his previous attacks. Watching the display, Will calmly admits to himself that the kid actually understands his unique magic pretty well. Taking it a step further, the arrogant noble adds a fierce rotation to the massive blade. He launches the colossal, spinning fire drill straight at our boy, hoping to crush him instantly. Yet, Will simply stands his ground, catching the devastating, roaring drill with a single, mana-infused hand. Seeing his ultimate attack stopped dead in its tracks leaves the pampered elite utterly dumbfounded. Gritting his teeth in absolute frustration, the pampered elite refuses to accept his impending reality. Screaming at the top of his lungs, the desperate brat pours his remaining mana into the attack. Unfazed by the tantrum, our boy casually wonders if he should dial up his physical enhancement. With a single effortless swing of his blade, Will completely shatters the colossal fiery construct into pieces. Watching his ultimate trump card get swatted away leaves the arrogant noble trembling in absolute disbelief. Before the brat can even blink, Will instantly closes the distance, cheerfully promising to heal his impending injuries. He brings the heavy blade crashing down, fully intending to teach the bully a brutal lesson. Suddenly, a frantic voice screams to stop as a massive earthen wall erupts right in front of Will. Our boy gracefully leaps back from the sudden obstacle, leaving the terrified noble collapsed on the ground. Turns out the corrupt instructor finally intervened, summoning a giant barricade to save his favorite student from humiliation. The instructor scrambles for an excuse, telling them to stand down because of the next match. Will just stands there silently, looking down at the completely broken noble who can't even meet his gaze. With the fight over, our boy turns to the instructor and asks if this means he can finally attend regular classes. The instructor clicks his tongue in annoyance but grumbles for him to do what he wants, to which Will gives a smug thank you. Having gotten what he came for, Will turns his back on the mess and walks away, leaving everyone dumbfounded. As he leaves, He reflects on the strange sensation he felt during the fight. He realizes he's created his own offensive magic style, one that let him dominate a skilled mage. It all clicks into place. This was only possible because of the training he received from Professor Veronica. A confident smirk spreads across his face as he realizes he can truly become an offensive mage after all. A new day dawns at the academy, marking a brand new start for our overpowered healer. Back on the training ground, the instructor offers a hand to Ulpus, who brushes it off, claiming it was just a class accident. He then subtly threatens the professor, saying he'd rather not bother his powerful father with every little incident. With a menacing glint in his eye, he asks the instructor if he understands what he's implying. The instructor, sweating bullets, pushes up his glasses and confirms that he understands perfectly. But inwardly, he's seething, vowing that hell never let a trash-tier healer act so high and mighty in his academy. And so, Will finally attends his first proper class, sitting amongst the other combat mage hopefuls. He immediately witnesses the academy's harsh standards as a professor ruthlessly deducts points from a student for a simple mistake. Our boy can't help but feel a little out of place in this cutthroat environment. Behind him, Ulpus and his lackey are already snickering, clearly enjoying the tense atmosphere. The pompous noble shoots Will a smug look, making it crystal clear that their little rivalry is far from over. And so begins the next class, with our boy steeling himself for more academy nonsense. The lesson is on magical creatures, and the specimen of the day is a tiny caged salamander. Will immediately senses something is off when he's directed to sit all by himself in the front row. The new instructor announces that the front seats are reserved for students with bad grades. A clear jab at Will. He realizes he's way too close for comfort as the supposedly harmless creature locks eyes with him. Suddenly, the salamander unleashes a jet of fire, which Will expertly blocks with a pot he brought from home. The dumbfounded instructor asks why on earth he's carrying a pot, and Will just says he had a feeling it would be necessary. Annoyed that his little trap failed, the instructor simply confiscates the pot, leaving Will defenseless. Will glares at the now innocent-looking creature, the whole scheme clicking into place. He understands now. They'll let him participate, but they have no intention of letting him attend class properly. With his pot confiscated, our boy is left defenseless, wondering how he's supposed to navigate this hostile environment. He glances around the classroom and notices one girl who isn't glaring at him, but just watching with a quiet curiosity. She seems to be the only one not actively participating in the school-wide effort to make his life a living hell. The harassment didn't stop there, of course. Ulpus casually singes Will's uniform with a fireball, claiming his hand slipped. The instructor then calls on him, asking an advanced question she knows he can't answer, and deducts points for his failure. Even outside of class, the bullying is relentless, as he returns to find his entire room has been completely trashed. To top it all off, the dorm supervisor shows up, accuses him of misbehaving, and punishes him with no dinner. Back in his room, Will collapses onto his bed, sighing as he realizes just how deep the academy's hostility runs. He feels the weight of it all, knowing he still has a mountain of challenges ahead just to survive here. But as he stares at his hand, he steels his resolve. He won't let this petty harassment break him this time. He remembers the feeling of fighting with his own hands for the first time and winning. Lying in bed, a new fire ignites within him. He truly believes he can become an offensive mage. With a textbook finally in his possession, he decides to get ahead by reviewing the lessons. The next day, however, he arrives to find the classroom completely empty, save for one other student. He checks the clock, realizing the instructor is late, which feels a little too convenient. Glancing at the only other person there, he suspects they've both been deliberately left out of a classroom change. Deciding there's no point in waiting around to be humiliated, he stands up to leave. But before he goes, he approaches the quiet girl, who jumps in surprise. He asks if she also thinks the class was moved, and she timidly agrees. Will is left speechless when she says she figured it was a setup simply because he, the academy's outcast, was there. With a gloomy aura, she says she must be an outcast too, lumping herself in with him. She suggests that as fellow loners, they should try to get along, though our boy notes her words have thorns. But Will just smiles warmly and extends his hand, genuinely happy to make a friend. Completely caught off guard by his sincerity, she nervously accepts his handshake. She finally introduces herself, stating her name is Erica Glenn. Will thinks to himself that Erica is his very first friend at this academy, while she remarks that his outcast status is understandable for a healer. She bluntly adds that everyone says healers are just weaklings, a comment that makes Will's expression harden. He forces a laugh, pointing out that she's an offensive mage and still doesn't have any friends either. Will realizes that her personality aside, the discrimination against healers here runs incredibly deep. He remembers his past life where he was hailed as the kingdom's greatest healer, a time when he never had to face such trash-tier treatment. He steels his resolve, knowing that at an academy specializing in offensive magic, he has to fight this discrimination head-on. After a moment of hesitation, Erica looks up at him with a question. She finally asks him directly why a healer like him would ever choose to come to Schwarz. Our boy pauses, the question echoing the struggles he's faced his entire life. He declares with conviction that being born a healer is no excuse to simply give up. Will deflects with a smile, saying he has his reasons, and cleverly turns the question back on her. Turns out, Erica is from a small provincial noble family with a big problem. With no male heir, her parents' only hope for continuing the family line was for her to become a distinguished offensive mage. Will listens intently, understanding that graduating from this top-tier academy is her only path to becoming the head of her family. But here's the kicker. She confesses she has almost zero talent for offensive magic, which is why her classes are tough and she has no friends. But Erica's mood suddenly brightens, as she announces that she did manage to make one friend. She cheerfully says that with a dropout like Will around, she won't feel so bad about her own trash-tier grades, much to our boy's bewilderment. Will just smirks, knowing full well that things in this academy are far more twisted than she could ever imagine. He tells her to follow him, declaring they're going to find the classroom where the real lesson is happening. Erica is left completely dumbfounded but quickly scrambles to follow him out the door. They finally locate the correct classroom, only for the instructor to immediately call them out for being late. The whole class, led by Opus, erupts in snickers as Erica stammers an apology about not knowing the room had changed. But the long-haired instructor cuts her off with a cold glare, stating he doesn't care for excuses. A malicious grin spreads across his face as he decides to make an example out of them. He points to a ridiculously complex magic circle on the board and orders them to solve the problem in front of everyone. Erica panics, arguing that this is completely unfair since Will has barely even attended a single class. But our boy Will remains dead silent, his expression giving absolutely nothing away. The instructor doubles down on his ultimatum. Solve it and be forgiven, or fail and face the consequences. Opus and his crony are loving every second of this, convinced Will is about to be expelled. Without a word, Will calmly walks past the stunned instructor and picks up a piece of chalk. He approaches the board, ready to turn this public humiliation right back on them. As his hand starts to move, Opus scoffs, thinking this is just some pointless, desperate struggle. But in an instant, Will finishes writing the entire perfect solution, a smug look on his face. The instructor is left completely dumbfounded, staring at the board in utter disbelief. Through gritted teeth, he's forced to admit the answer is correct, leaving Opus absolutely seething. Erica is completely floored, wondering why he'd even bother helping her. She asks how he could possibly know the answer, but Will just sits there with a smug look on his face. After class, Erica can't hold back anymore and immediately approaches our boy for answers. She presses him on how he solved the problem, and he casually explains it was just an application from the textbook. He tells her he simply studied ahead, a statement that leaves Erica completely dumbfounded. She can't wrap her head around it, asking if he really read that dense textbook by himself, and he just confirms it like it's nothing. Turns out, he'd only started reading it yesterday but instantly recognized the Schwarz textbook was a top-tier goldmine. It was the perfect guide, systematically laying out everything from basics to advanced magic to surpass any average mage. He reflects that while it's tough for those without aptitude, his past life's mindset for studying made it a piece of cake. Back in the present, he smugly admits he stayed up all night because learning offensive magic was just too much fun, leaving Erica speechless. Erica is completely floored, stammering that the textbook is way too advanced and she thought he was a dropout. She suddenly panics, grabbing our boy and begging him not to leave her behind to be bullied as the new trash-tier student. Will calmly reassures her, promising to teach her anything she doesn't understand. He flashes a warm smile, telling her that's what friends are for, right? Overwhelmed by his kindness, Erica is moved to tears and can only stammer out a heartfelt thank you. But Will's inner thoughts are cold and calculated. He didn't come here to make friends, but an ally like Erica could be useful. He immediately asks for a favor in return, reminding her that their next class is basic offensive magic. Erica remembers this is the very class he kept failing, the one that got him kicked out, but figures he can pass now that he's beaten Opus. To her shock, Will admits he still can't use a single lick of basic offensive magic. But then he cracks a sly grin, clenching his fist and revealing he has a plan up his sleeve. Will leans in, explaining that this is exactly where he needs her help. The next day, students gather in the courtyard for their basic offensive magic class. Our boy begins to explain the two types of offensive magic, basic and unique. Basic magic is the standard stuff, built on a formula anyone can learn to use. But unique magic, like Opus's signature knife-spinning attack, is something only that specific person can wield. He points out that the Academy's curriculum is split to teach both the fundamentals and to refine one's unique talent. Will knows he can easily attend the unique magic classes, since his offensive healing has no correct answer. The real problem is the basic magic class, where passing requires casting standard offensive spells. He remembers the instructor's smug face, taunting him that practicals are a whole different beast from lectures. The instructor's words ring in his ears. Fail to use basic offensive magic, and you fail the class. The instructor smugly announces the assignment is the same as before. Cast a basic fireball. He reminds Will that this is the most fundamental magic, and failure means instant expulsion. Internally, he recalls seeing Will's impressive healing magic during the mock battle, but he scoffs, knowing a healer can't possibly use basic offensive spells. He tells the incompetent healer to just leave his class, but Will just cracks a subtle smirk. The instructor is stunned, wondering if this kid actually had the nerve to laugh at him. Suddenly, a perfect fireball erupts in Will's hand, leaving the instructor completely speechless. Our boy thinks to himself that his little plan worked perfectly. They didn't notice a thing. The scene pulls back to the present, revealing he's been telling this whole story to Erica. Turns out, the solution was simple. He had Erica secretly cast the fireball for him. Will reveals the real trick. He infused healing magic into a salamander's tail head hidden. He explains that by constantly healing it, he could hold the burning tail without getting hurt, much to Erica's disbelief. She's completely stunned by his pain tolerance and wonders who he really is. As we're reminded, he was the former world's greatest healer. He continues, explaining that right before the reveal, he supercharged the tail's flame sack with healing magic. In the flashback, this created a perfect imitation of a fireball, erupting right in front of the stunned instructors. The blast was so convincing that it looked exactly like a genuine offensive spell. With a smug grin, our boy then turned to the professor, asking for his verdict on the spell. The instructor was losing his mind, unable to comprehend how this kid suddenly learned to use offensive magic. Backed into a corner and utterly humiliated, he had no choice but to grunt that Will passed the test. Back in the present, Erica is just as dumbfounded as the instructor was, completely floored by his insane plan. But news of Will's stunt travels fast, and it doesn't take long for our resident bully Ulpus to hear about it. He storms into the instructor's office, absolutely furious and demanding to know what's going on. The dark-haired instructor is just as confused, but Ulpus screams that he doesn't care how Will did it. All he knows is that the trash-tier healer who defied him is now in his class, and he finds that unbearable. The instructor freezes, realizing Ulpus is threatening to use his family's influence to get the entire class disbanded. With a final command, Ulpus tells her to use any method she wants to get Will out of his sight for good. He leaves her alone in the classroom, giving her a chilling ultimatum she can't ignore. The instructor begins to panic, realizing that acting outside the rules is risky, but this is more than just a rich kid's tantrum. She's worked too hard to become a teacher here, and can't let some upstart healer threaten her position. Stealing her resolve, she decides she has no choice but to take matters into her own hands. Acting on her new resolve, the instructor calls Will out to the training grounds, and our boy wants to know what this is all about. She starts by sarcastically noting his recent confidence, but when he agrees, she snaps that it wasn't a compliment. With a smug look, she brings up the fact that he's missed several of her classes and demands to know how hell make up for it. Will has to bite his tongue, thinking it's her fault he was absent in the first place since she's the one who kicked him out. He calmly explains that he got the notes from Erica and studied on his own, so there shouldn't be any issues with his progress. But she's not here for excuses, telling him it's not his decision to make and that all absences require a formal makeup lesson. She continues, reminding him that the content of these makeup lessons is entirely at the discretion of the instructor in charge. And with a glint in her eye, she declares his makeup lesson will be a one-on-one mock battle against her. Will is dumbfounded. A battle between a teacher and a student is basically just a sanctioned beatdown. The instructor smirks, offering a handicap. If he can land just one single hit on her, she'll let him pass. She taunts our boy, saying with such generous terms, he has no choice but to accept her challenge. The instructor is utterly convinced his attacks will never even get close before her magic overwhelms him. Her plan is simple: beat him down until he understands the massive power gap between them and finally learns to obey. But to her surprise, Will just calmly agrees, telling her he understands the conditions and will do it. A wicked smile spreads across her face. The little trash-tier healer walked right into her trap. Without a moment's hesitation, she declares the lesson has begun and unleashes a torrent of golden mana. Will instantly recognizes this magic. It's the same earth-based spell she used to banish him from class. The ground beneath his feet begins to tremble and crack apart as she channels her power. A massive pillar of earth erupts from the ground and shoots towards him with blinding speed. Our boy is stunned, realizing the attack is far faster than he could have ever anticipated. With a grunt, our boy barely twists out of the way. The massive pillar grazing past him has completely shocked. This wasn't a lesson. This was a genuine attempt to pulverize him. The pillar smashes into the ground with devastating force, proving she's not holding back one bit. The instructor just smirks, taunting him and asking if all he's capable of is dodging. Will quickly analyzes her power, realizing she's manipulating the ground itself, which makes her far faster and more dangerous than Ulpus ever was. But he's not about to just be a sitting duck. He thinks to himself that while she's fast, it's not a speed he can't react to. He gracefully dodges through a new wave of earthen spikes, closing the gap between them. He slams his palms to the ground, a brilliant golden magic circle erupting beneath them. In a flash, he turns her own element against her, raising pillars of earth to forge his own path forward. The massive pillar he summoned serves as the perfect smokescreen for his real attack. But the instructor just smirks, completely unimpressed by his display of power. Turns out, it was all a distraction as our boy leaps over the top, a blade of pure mana already in hand. With his eyes glowing gold, he pours his energy into a devastating downward slash. But she's a veteran for a reason, instantly encasing herself in a full suit of rock armor to block the strike. Will's blade grinds against the stone as he realizes her defense is absurdly tough. She effortlessly throws him back with a wave of earthen spikes, showing the gap in their power. From within her golem, she mocks his feeble strength, saying he'll never break her iron wall armor. Will lands, catching his breath and admitting to himself that this is the limit of a healer imitating a combat mage. He almost scoffs at his own attempt, thinking it's laughable to fight like this, but he's just getting started. He explains that his deep study of the human body taught him one crucial fact: people subconsciously hold back. That's because going all out would literally tear a normal person's body apart from the strain. Our boy smirks, asking if she's trying to lecture him about the power gap when she's the one hiding in a shell. He knows that even if he could remove his body's natural limiters, the backlash would cripple him. But here's the kicker: he's a healer, so he grins and says it doesn't matter if his arm shatters into a million pieces. The instructor's eyes widen from inside her helmet as a terrifying realization starts to sink in. Will strolls forward, admitting he hates pain but can just heal it instantly, and tells her it's time to test that theory. With his eyes blazing, he channels an insane amount of raw, crackling healing energy into his fist. Her smug confidence evaporates into pure panic as she sees the cataclysmic power building in his hand. He unleashes the punch, and her supposedly unbreakable iron wall armor shatters like cheap glass. The impact absolutely demolishes her armor, leaving her a bloody, broken mess on the ground. Our boy stands over her, coolly stating that a teacher should never set limits for their students. He thinks back to Veronica's lesson the moment he realized that using healing magic to destroy was possible. Flexing his hand, he knows this is just the beginning. He can get way, way stronger. But his victory lap is cut short when he senses a massive surge of mana behind him. Suddenly, a gigantic wall of earth erupts from the ground, aiming to crush him flat. And what do you know? The instructor is back on her feet, looking more pissed than ever. She pushes up her glasses, her eyes glowing with a promise of some serious pain. Will is caught completely off guard by the sheer scale of her counterattack. The earth pillar slams down, a desperate, full-power move from a cornered beast. But when the dust settles, the instructor is on her knees, utterly defeated. She can't believe it, her pride shattered as she seethes with pure, unadulterated rage. Our boy just casually asks if he passed the test, since the condition was just landing one hit. She completely loses it, screaming that with no witnesses, this fight never happened. Her pride as an elite mage simply cannot accept being hit by a trash-tier healer. Refusing to admit defeat, she channels all her remaining mana for one last, desperate attack. Will just sighs, completely over her tantrum, and mentions that his power isn't just for punching. He floods his legs with mana, preparing to show her what real speed looks like. As her earth spikes erupt, our boy vanishes, weaving through the attack like it's standing still. Before she can even blink, Will is right in her face, leaving her completely dumbfounded. Will thinks to himself that he won't even need his earth armor for this. A simple punch will do. The instructor's eyes flare with magic as she tries to process the impossible situation unfolding before her. For a brief moment, she's confused, wondering why his fist has suddenly stopped just inches from her face. Then the horrifying truth dawns on her. She can't move either, completely frozen in place. It's not that he stopped. She realizes with dawning horror that time itself has slowed to an absolute crawl. Our boy just smirks, silently telling her that this is the end of the line. As the punch finally connects in super slow motion, the impact is stretched out, prolonging the agony. She realizes the pain is exponentially worse than a normal hit, an eternity of impact in a single moment. Trapped in this temporal hell, she can't endure the pain, but she can't even scream or escape. Forced to her knees, all the prideful instructor can do is mentally beg for this humiliating lesson to finally be over. As normal time resumes, the full kinetic force of the punch sends the instructor flying across the courtyard. She slams into the ground, her body and pride completely shattered by the overwhelming defeat. Will casually dispels his magic, welcoming her back and noting that for him, the whole ordeal was just an instant. The instructor, completely baffled, demands to know what kind of sorcery he just used on her. Our boy explains that the moment he hit her, he cast a powerful sensory enhancement spell. He reveals it's a healing spell he's been repurposing to increase his own reaction speed. By overloading her with it, he made 1 second feel like an agonizing 1,000 seconds of pain. She shudders in horror, finally understanding the hell she was just put through. Leaning in with a smug grin, Will asks if this means he's finally passed her little makeup lesson. Gritting her teeth in pure rage, she grabs him and spits out a confirmation, but she has one last thing to say. She warns him that it's hard to eliminate ingrained prejudice against healers. But our boy's eyes glow with menace as he promises that if she gets in his way again, he'll burn the memory of this pain into her very soul. He then calms down, explaining that all he wants is to attend classes peacefully and not be bothered by other students. With a terrifyingly cheerful grin, he asks if she'll be a good professor and grant his simple request. With the lesson brutally taught, the day at the prestigious Schwarz Academia continues. Later, the instructor stands alone in a hallway, still reeling from the encounter and wondering what kind of monster she just provoked. All her life, she believed healers were weaklings, destined to serve powerful offensive mages like herself. But Will is completely different. He possesses not only immense power, but a will so strong it feels like pure killing intent. As she's lost in thought, she's spotted by the Academy's resident trash-tier noble, Ulpus. He saunters over with a smug look, asking if the professor is finally done with Will's little makeup lesson, completely unaware she just got dismantled. He smugly assumes this whole ordeal is just another nail in Will's coffin, bringing him closer to expulsion. But the instructor has had enough of his clueless arrogance and absolutely explodes, telling him to shut up. She grabs him by the collar, her eyes glowing with power as she warns him to never mess with Will again. It's for his own good, she explains, because thinking of our boy as a mere healer is a fatal mistake. Ulpus shoves her away, falling back on his usual tactic of threatening to tell his powerful father. She's completely unfazed, coldly telling the little noble to go right ahead and do it. Turning her back, she calls his bluff, saying if he has so much influence, he should get Will expelled himself. She knows it's useless. It's far more likely that a monster like Will eventually turn his fangs on them all. With that chilling final thought, she walks away, leaving Ulpus utterly speechless and humiliated. A moment later, a fist slams furiously against a wooden door, echoing down the empty hallway. Seething with rage, Ulpus can only curse his own powerlessness after that brutal verbal beatdown. A few days later, things have finally calmed down for our boy in class. Will stretches, enjoying the newfound peace now that the bullies are off his back. It seems the professor's warning worked, as Ulpus now only glares from a distance, too scared to act. While he can finally focus on his studies, Will admits to himself he's far from satisfied. Hes haunted by visions of the future, knowing he has to get much stronger to prevent humanity's extinction. Using healing for physical enhancement was a good start, but it's just brute force punching and kicking. He realizes it's trash tier compared to real offensive magic. He needs to evolve his fighting style, so he seeks out the one person who can help, laying out his current dilemma and asking for her thoughts. He's come to his old comrade and current teacher, the legendary Professor Veronica. Will finishes explaining his predicament, asking for her expert opinion on his combat style. The legendary Professor Veronica takes it all in, her expression as cold and sharp as ever. Before diving into tactics, however, she tells him there's something else she needs to say first. To his surprise, she doesn't critique him at all. Instead, she simply says he's done well. Will is stunned as she reveals he's been the talk of the faculty, an unprecedented case of a healer excelling in their brutal curriculum. She adds that most of the other teachers weren't too pleased about it, and our boy can only awkwardly agree. He asks if she's been hiding the fact she advised him, but Veronica just states she doesn't talk to the other professors much anyway. It dawns on Will that she's an outcast too, isolated by the other instructors who are cut from the same cloth. Hes actually relieved, admitting he'd feel terrible if her reputation suffered for helping him out. But Veronica just shrugs it off, then completely flips the script by saying she's the one who's grateful, leaving Will utterly dumbfounded. She explains that healers just don't have the mindset to turn combat theory into bloody practice, which is why he's so unique. Drawing her sword, Veronica admits she's always been curious what a true fighting healer would look like in action. Will is completely floored, asking his professor what in the world she's doing. She tells him plainly, If he wants advice on getting stronger, she needs to see his current level for herself. He starts to panic, but Veronica cuts him off with a cold truth bomb. There are no timeouts on a real battlefield. In the blink of an eye, she's on him, a flash of movement that sends him reeling back. She unleashes a devastating overhead slash, her blade glowing with a terrifying blue aura. Our boy grits his teeth and barely manages to parry the strike, the sheer force of it nearly shattering his stance. But Veronica is relentless, pressing the attack with a flurry of strikes that puts Will completely on the back foot. He realizes that even with magic pumping up his reaction speed, he's barely managing to keep up with her monstrous power. He realizes her movements aren't just fast, they're refined for a relentless, non-stop assault. Our boy is already gasping for air, knowing that simply enhancing his body has its limits. He decides he has one shot, a single chance to use a burst of speed he's been holding back. His plan is simple: catch the monster professor completely off guard. Pumping his legs with mana, he launches himself forward in a golden blur, flipping over her head. For a split second, Veronica is caught by surprise as he closes the distance instantly. With a sharp clang, he smacks her sword right out of her hand, a perfect disarm. His eyes glint with victory, believing he's finally turned the tables on her. He can't help but let out a small, triumphant laugh as her blade clatters to the ground. But Veronica just smirks, revealing her magic sword and admitting she's impressed he forced her to use it. Veronica admits his skills are top tier for his age, but tells him it's nowhere near enough. She's impressed by his ambition, correctly guessing that simple physical enhancement isn't cutting it for him. Our boy agrees, lamenting that no matter how much he pushes his body, his options are still limited. He confesses he's been trying to think of new ways to use his healing magic, but he's hit a dead end. Veronica explains his problem isn't a lack of ideas, but a lack of real combat experience to shape them. She asks him to reflect on their fight, and a sudden flashback makes him realize something crucial. He excitedly asks for more training sessions, but she reveals there's a monster subjugation field training coming up. Will is dumbfounded. He remembers this event from his past life, the 3 Academy joint monster subjugation. The stage is now set for the next arc, with Will, his rival Ulpus, and Erica, representing Schwarz Academia. Will recalls the details of the joint training, which includes the prestigious Heilig Healing Academy. The elite Silbern Swordsmanship Academy also sends its best students to participate. In his past life, he was a trash-tier healer who never got to join these mixed parties for real subjugation quests. But this time is different. Hez determined to slaughter these monsters and rewrite humanity's grim future. Our boy clenches his fist, a confident smirk on his face, ready for his very first monster hunt. Veronica sees his burning ambition but reminds him it's not going to be that easy. She explains that to even qualify for the event, he must first prove his skills in the Academy's own brutal selection exam. She then mentions some stiff competition, a first-year prodigy who's already making waves. Looking down at the rumored genius, she challenges Will to not just participate, but to aim for first place. Will flashes back to the grim future, his resolve hardening as he vows to slaughter every last monster. He's practically buzzing with energy, completely fired up for his first real subjugation mission. He asks Veronica what the selection exam is like, and she bluntly tells him it's a straight-up brawl between candidates. She explains that hundreds apply, but only the strongest few are chosen, making Will realize this school is pure survival of the fittest. Our boy recalls his old school, Heilig, which was a joke in comparison, and figures this cutthroat style is just how Schwarz operates. The memory of Heilig brings a flashback of his old mentor, and he briefly wonders what the old man is up to now. Veronica snaps him back to reality, warning him the prodigy is rumored to be stronger than some teachers, like their own homeroom instructor. Intrigued, Will asks if she's ever actually met this so-called genius. She says another teacher handles him, which keeps students from bothering her, but Will smirks, knowing they're just too scared to approach her. Seeing his unshakable determination, Veronica offers to personally help him with his training. Will is ecstatic and gratefully accepts her offer to train him personally. In what feels like the blink of an eye, the day of the selection exam finally arrives. Our boy strides into the massive coliseum, the air thick with anticipation. Has done all the prep work he could. Now all that's left is to crush the competition. Just as he's about to head in, a powerful voice calls out his name from behind. He turns around, dumbfounded to see the headmaster of Schwarz Academy, Alnaram Goldgran, standing right there. The chairman gives him an update, saying his granddaughter has been in perfect health since Will's miracle cure. He then apologizes for not being able to look after Will, knowing full well how ruthless the Academy is. Will just smiles, admitting it was a bit of a struggle at first, but he's doing just fine now. He then looks the most powerful man in the Academy dead in the eye and declares he's aiming for first place, earning a hearty laugh. But Will's bold claim is overheard by a massive figure who scoffs at the very idea. This guy can't believe some nobody is aiming for the top spot, finding it utterly laughable. Turns out, this is the field training supervisor, Bode, and he's here to teach these brats a lesson. Will's eyes narrow. He instantly recognizes this man from his previous life. In the future, Bode was a legendary war hero known as the Purple Lightning, a top-tier offensive mage. Unfortunately, our boy doesn't have fond memories of him, as Bode grabs him by the collar. The supervisor starts spouting nonsense about how combat is a world of pure talent, not effort. He gets right in Will's face, declaring that a trash-tier healer has zero chance of winning. But Will is completely unfazed, his expression stone-cold and ready for a challenge. He calmly tells them there's no point arguing, as the exam results will speak for themselves. But Bode just calls this his educational method. Bode just scoffs, telling Will that his real opponent is their top prodigy, Sirius. A new figure with long, flowing white hair steps into view, oozing confidence. This is Sirius Bluenote, the Academy's #1 student and a certified genius. Our boy immediately recognizes him as the final hurdle he must overcome to claim the top spot. The two lock eyes, the air crackling with the tension of their unspoken rivalry. The chairman, amused by their hot-blooded energy, tells them to stop posturing as it's time for the exam to begin. The students are then marched into a massive arena, the stage for their upcoming trial. They all line up in formation, a mix of determination and anxiety on their faces. Will is surprised to see Erica, who sheepishly explains she has to participate or her parents will cut off her allowance. Of course, Ulpus and his crew are also in the crowd, shooting daggers at Will from a distance. Will groans internally, thinking this whole exam is a massive pain, while Erica next to him is practically sweating bullets from sheer nerves. The chairman addresses the sea of applicants, declaring how proud he is and telling them all to let their fighting spirits run wild. He explains the preliminary round, a free-for-all survival match where only the last one standing will advance to the main event. Our boy thinks it seems way too cramped for a 100-person battle royale, but his rival Sirius just smirks, completely unfazed by the odds. As if reading their minds, the chairman tells them not to worry about the space, and slams his staff into the ground, activating a massive magic circle. A colossal vortex of spatial magic erupts from the ground, sucking all the stunned students into its swirling depths. They find themselves floating helplessly in a bizarre, starry void, utterly dumbfounded by the sudden change of scenery. The chairman stands at the epicenter of it all, raising his staff to unleash the full power of this grand-scale teleportation spell. In a flash, Will finds himself on solid ground again, teleported into the middle of a dense forest, completely alone. He quickly gets his bearings, realizing the chairman just dumped them all into the massive forest right behind the academy. The chairman's voice echoes in their minds, explaining that he's randomly scattered everyone across the forest. He continues, saying they can either avoid strong opponents or team up. But poor Erica Glenn is already panicking, realizing she's been separated from Will. Meanwhile, the prodigy Sirius Bluenote looks completely unbothered, knowing full well that his starting position, lucky or not, won't change the outcome. Our boy Will is just dumbfounded, thinking that the sheer scale of the chairman's teleportation magic is absolutely absurd. With the rules laid out and the birds taking flight, the chairman's voice booms one last time, officially declaring the start of the exam. Will doesn't waste a single second, immediately scrambling up a tree to get a vantage point and assess the situation like a true veteran. He activates his presence concealment, minimizing his life force to become practically invisible, a classic survival tactic from his past life. With his senses heightened and his presence erased, he scans the forest, ready to pick his battles carefully. It doesn't take long for him to spot trouble. Erica Glenn is cornered by two other students, wielding a comically large hammer against them. Turns out one of her attackers is that orange-haired bully, who summons a massive earth golem to crush her. Despite being outmatched, Erica roars that she'll crush the golem with her magic hammer. Her blonde-haired teammate provides support, casting a blizzard spell to try and freeze the hulking construct. From his hiding spot, Will just grins, thinking this is a golden opportunity to observe various offensive magics. He isn't just trying to pass the exam, he's gathering combat data, and he likes what he sees, but their teamwork wasn't enough. The next thing we see, both Erica and her partner are out cold on the ground. The orange-haired bully pumps his fists, bragging about how his golem easily took down two opponents. Just as he's celebrating, our boy Will appears behind him, calmly stating that he got a good look. Before the bully can even process what's happening, Will places a hand on his head and unleashes consciousness severance. The bully's eyes go white as Hez instantly knocked out, collapsing to the ground in a heap. This is another one of Will's terrifying new skills, weaponizing his healing arts to manipulate a foe's life force and force them unconscious. Will reflects that this move is perfect for neutralizing foes without injury, but it requires a huge power gap. He's just glad the special training he did with Professor Veronica actually paid off. But his moment of reflection is cut short as he senses an incoming attack. A volley of daggers flies past him, embedding themselves in the ground just inches away. He turns to see a massive sword, instantly recognizing the trash tier magic signature. Our boy lets out a sigh. He knows exactly which group of idiots is behind this. And there he is, Ulpus and his goons, looking smug as Will calls him out for never learning his lesson. Ulpus just plays dumb, claiming he's just earnestly trying to pass the exam. But his act falls apart as he and his cronies power up for a 3-on-1 ambush. With a twisted grin, Ulpus unleashes his signature knife creation magic, ready for round 2. One of the cronies proudly shows off his new skill, poison enchantment magic, coating his blade in a vile purple substance. The three of them combine their power, unleashing a shadow replication spell that fills the sky with dozens of glowing daggers. Ulpus cackles, boasting that the knives are poisoned and that there are far too many for Will to possibly dodge. The deadly volley of blades rains down on our boy, a seemingly impossible attack to evade. Will calmly assesses the situation. He knows he can heal the poison, but getting hit by this many daggers is still a problem. But instead of dodging, he simply stands his ground, gathering a dense ball of green mana in his hand. With a firm stomp, he channels that powerful energy directly into the earth beneath him. In an instant, a massive golem erupts from the ground, effortlessly deflecting every single one of the poisoned blades. Ulpus is completely dumbfounded, his jaw hitting the floor as his ultimate attack is casually blocked. Turns out, our boy can summon golems now, and it looks more than ready to turn these bullies into paste. Will reveals the secret sauce. Healing magic normally only works on living things, but a golem animated by the caster's blood is basically a magical creature. By pumping it full of life force, he can control it with a level of precision that's just plain unfair. He unleashes his new pet with a pseudo-life bestowal, and the golem charges forward like a freight train, sending the bullies scattering in terror. One of Ulpus's cronies gets a rock-solid fist straight to the gut, coughing up blood instantly. The other goon is slammed into the ground before he can even react. These trash-tier sidekicks are getting folded. Ulpus is in full-blown panic mode, screaming at his useless cronies for getting beaten so easily. But before he can finish his sentence, Will appears right in his face, moving faster than he can track. The blonde bully is completely frozen in fear, realizing he's just picked a fight with a monster. With a cold smile, our boy simply tells him it's time to say goodnight. Meanwhile, Erica and her partner are having a hell of a time just trying to damage their own golem. Will chills in a tree, thinking how his golem covers his weaknesses while letting him scope out the competition. But just as he's getting comfortable, a ridiculously powerful spell erupts from nowhere, shaking the entire forest. Our boy is completely dumbfounded, having no clue what just hit him. Before he can even process it, the vortex of raw magical energy starts sucking him in. He gets violently thrown through the air, completely helpless against the overwhelming force. The spell carves a massive, perfectly straight trench through the woods, stretching all the way back to the academy. After landing, he sees Erica and her partner knocked out cold, their golem smashed to pieces by the blast. He stands amidst the utter devastation, realizing someone just cleared the exam area with a single attack. Looking down the path of destruction, he spots the silhouette of the mage responsible for this madness. It's the academy's top prodigy, Sirius, and Will knows instantly that this guy is the real deal. Seeing this display of power, Will's battle instincts kick in, and he wonders if he should test his own strength right now. But he immediately shuts that thought down. This isn't the time or place for a reckless showdown. Suddenly, a voice announces the preliminaries are over, with only 4 students, including Will and Sirius, making the cut. They're told the main event is tomorrow, and to wait for the teleportation magic to activate. As the circle glows, Will locks eyes with Sirius across the massive trench he carved into the earth. The prodigy gives him a cold, intense stare, clearly acknowledging him as a worthy opponent. Will just smirks back, realizing this guy is just as eager for their inevitable battle as he is. The sheer scale of the destruction is a stark reminder of the monster he'll be facing in the arena. Back in his dorm room, Will wastes no time and immediately starts preparing for the next day's fight. He sits at his desk, writing and strategizing, already plotting how to overcome the academy's #1 student. Elsewhere, one of Ulpus's cronies tries to talk some sense into him, telling him to just let it go. He points out that Will is genuinely strong and even healed them after knocking them out cold. But Ulpus absolutely loses it, screaming that his noble family's teachings forbid being looked down on by a trash-tier healer. He starts trembling, terrified of what his father will say if he finds out about this utter humiliation. His 2 lackeys just stare at each other, completely done with their boss's pathetic meltdown. They tell him to do whatever he wants, because they're finished getting hurt for his sake. With that, they turn their backs and walk away, leaving Ulpus completely dumbfounded. Seething with rage, he decides that if magic won't work, he'll just have to eliminate Will another way. Back in his room, our boy is completely oblivious, deep in his books, and preparing for the real fight tomorrow. Suddenly, he's jolted from his studies, startled by an unexpected interruption at his door. Will wonders who could possibly be at his door this late at night. A bad feeling creeps up on him as he cautiously opens the door to see who it is. And speak of the devil, it's Ulpus, putting on a sickeningly charming act. Our boy immediately cuts to the chase, asking what he's scheming. But Ulpus plays innocent, claiming he just wants to talk. The facade quickly drops as he admits he despises healers and has been trying to get Will expelled this whole time. Will remains unimpressed, recalling all the pathetic schemes Ulpus has already tried and failed. Ulpus smirks, deciding he's done with the roundabout tricks and should have been more direct. His eyes flare with mana as he delivers his final menacing demand. Leave this academy. Will calmly asks why he's so obsessed, but Ulpus scoffs, saying he doesn't need a reason to look down on a healer. Turns out, it's a family thing. He reveals that in his noble house, healers are considered weaklings and are cast out, just like his own brother was. Ulpus recalls how his brother would just laugh off the mockery he received for being a healer. But deep down, his brother knew the family's twisted creed. An offensive mage was glorious, while a healer was pathetic. Will processes this, realizing Ulpus's hatred is a deep-rooted, toxic family teaching. Convinced he's made his point, Ulpus gestures to the door, telling Will that Schwarz is no place for a healer. But our boy isn't fazed, coolly asking if Ulpus really thinks hell quit, then vowing to make him leave instead. Ulpus's face darkens, his eyes glowing as he decides to hit a nerve, reminding Will that he has family too. Will is visibly caught off guard, not expecting the bully to stoop to this level. Turns out, Ulpus had his servants investigate Will, revealing he knows all about his sister and their close bond. He then makes a veiled threat, leaving it to Will's imagination what might happen to her if he gives the order. Leaning in, Ulpus smugly asks if he's made up his mind, and Will, with a chilling calm, confirms that he has. Before Ulpus can even finish his threat, Will snaps, grabbing the bully by the throat with blinding speed. He then sends the trash-tier noble flying across the room with a single, powerful shove. But our boy isn't done. He pins Ulpus down and starts twisting his arm, making him beg for mercy. Will just stares down at him, coldly reminding him that he already said he'd made his decision. With a sickening crack, he breaks the arm, and a raw scream of agony rips through the room. The once arrogant bully is reduced to a sobbing, hyperventilating mess on the floor. Through his tears, Ulpus tries to regain control, threatening that his father and the academy will ruin Will for this. But Will just smirks, a green light glowing as he casually announces that he's already healed the arm. Ulpus is completely dumbfounded, feeling his perfectly restored limb, wondering what kind of sick game this is. And then, with another brutal snap, Will breaks the arm all over again, showing him true despair. The cycle of horror begins again, as Will twists the bully's arm into an unnatural position. With a chilling calm, he promises to just heal it again, his hands glowing with green mana. And then he snaps it once more, telling Ulpus he'll just keep breaking it until he gets the message. He smiles, explaining that while he can tolerate personal attacks, threatening his sister is a line that should never have been crossed. Our boy's goal isn't just pain. He needs to utterly shatter Ulpus's spirit and make him swear from the bottom of his heart to never mess with him again. Ulpus can only scream, his mind finally breaking as he realizes what kind of monster he's provoked. It finally dawns on him. This isn't a healer, it's a demon in human skin. Entangling with him again means a fate worse than death. After leaving the mentally shattered bully in the dark, Will bids him a casual goodnight. He then cheerfully waves from a window, reminding the traumatized Ulpus not to forget his promise. Back in his room, Will stretches, feeling refreshed by the ordeal and ready for a good night's sleep. The day of the tournament's main event arrives, and our boy Will steps into the arena, ready for what's next. Up in the stands, the Alliance chairman watches intently, curious to see the performance of the healer he personally admitted. Even the Academy's top instructors, the war hero Bodhi and the prodigy Veronica, are here to witness the finals. Suddenly, a familiar voice calls out to Will, expressing total disbelief that he actually made it through the preliminaries. It's none other than Erica Glenn, looking incredibly nervous to be facing him in the first round. She sheepishly explains she got lucky, just using firewalls and a cowardly siege strategy to survive without actually fighting anyone. Will finds it rare for an offensive mage to rely on running, but he questions if that tactic will be enough to survive a real battle. Knowing she's completely outmatched, Erica tries to pull the friend card, asking if hell go easy on her, but he flatly refuses. She wasn't expecting much else, but with renewed fire, she declares that she'll still aim for the highest evaluation possible. With that, the instructor gives the signal, and the first match of the main event officially begins. With a determined look, Erica unleashes her full power right from the get-go. A massive torrent of fire erupts from her hands, roaring across the arena towards our boy. Will just stands there and takes the full force of the blast head-on without even flinching. He calmly analyzes the attack, thinking it's just some orthodox flame magic that his healing can easily overpower. As he prepares to simply brush the flames aside, he suddenly senses that something is off. The fire isn't dissipating. Instead, it's clinging to him, burning with an unnatural persistence. A flicker of concern crosses his face as he realizes this magic is far from ordinary. Meanwhile, Erica declares she's just getting started, gathering even more mana for her next assault. She launches another fireball, relentlessly pressing her attack while Will is still engulfed in the first wave. Our boy is dumbfounded. The fire he took isn't going out at all, and he finally understands this is Erica's unique magic. Will realizes that even if her firepower is average, the abnormal persistence of her flames makes it dangerous to keep tanking hits. He flashes back to an experiment where he had Erica infuse her magic into a salamander's tail, confirming her own trait was enhancing its properties. Our boy muses that if she created a wall of these flames, even the most aggressive mages would struggle to break through. He can't help but think her magic is just as sticky and persistent as her personality, and she cheekily agrees they're two of a kind. The crowd erupts, completely won over by Erica's surprising performance, and now they're all chanting for her to take down the healer. Fueled by the cheers, Erica starts to wonder if she actually has a shot at beating the infamous Will. Her confidence skyrockets as she reminds herself she survived the preliminaries too, and she yells at Will to surrender now. But Will just smiles, calmly stating that he's about to counterattack, since he can just ramp up his healing magic to extinguish the flames. Refusing to back down, Erica unleashes everything she has in one final, massive wave of fire, determined to overwhelm him. A wicked smirk spreads across Will's face as he thinks that if the flame won't burn out, he'll just have to deal with it another way. Instead of healing, our boy reaches out and grabs her persistent flames with his bare hand. He declares that if he can't put them out, hell, just use them for his own attack. Erica is completely dumbfounded, unable to process how he's using her own magic to create a flaming fist. With a wicked grin, Will closes the distance in an instant, ready to end this. She panics, desperately telling him to give up, but her words are useless now. He slams his fiery fist right into her, a perfect counter using her own power. Erica hits the dirt, completely defeated and smoking from the impact. The announcer's voice booms across the stadium, declaring Will the winner of the match. But Will just sighs, realizing that even after a win like this, the trash tier evaluation of healers won't change. Hearing his disappointment, Erica yells from the ground, telling him not to dare forfeit and asking what kind of battle mage he is. Erica panics on the ground, apologizing for her loss as the crowd's cheers die down. But our boy just offers her a hand, telling her she put up a good fight. He even gives her a little healing boost, reassuring her that she might still pass. For a second, Erica is completely stunned by his kindness, a blush creeping onto her face, but a booming voice shatters the moment, declaring she has no chance in hell. Suddenly, the war hero Bode yanks her away from Will, much to everyone's shock. Bode leans in with a smug grin, telling Will to think about the situation logically. He points out the cold, hard fact. Erica just lost to a supposedly trash-tier healer. He calls her scum for even considering forfeiting to someone like Will, reinforcing the Academy's brutal hierarchy. With a flash of menacing energy, Bode orders her to get lost, and she scrambles away in pure terror. Will calmly calls out the war hero, asking if he thinks he's being a little too harsh on a student. Bode just scoffs, his aura flaring as he claims it's his duty as supervisor to weed out the weak, calling it tough love. But our boy isn't backing down, taking a defiant step forward to challenge the instructor's authority. With a predatory grin, Bode declares that it looks like only one person is going to pass this year, clearly aiming to fail Will. Just as the tension is about to snap, a figure steps between them, calmly telling the war hero to move. Will is stunned to see it's Sirius Bluenote, the Academy's top student, wondering when the hell he even got there. Sirius turns to Will, asking if he shares the same might makes right opinion as Professor Bode. He then states that in the end, strength is everything, and because Bode is strong, he must be correct. Will just scratches his head with a relaxed smile, completely unbothered by this cold, hard logic. But then Sirius glances back, adding that he doesn't think Will is weak either, a massive nod of respect from the number one. Sirius declares that if strength makes you right, then he's going to be the one who is right. Our boy just stares back, realizing this has become a battle of philosophies. Suddenly, the name Sirius Bluenote jogs a memory from Will's past life. He remembers hearing rumors about a ridiculously powerful battle mage from the Northern Front. This guy's power was on another level, capable of wiping out entire battlefields single-handedly. In fact, Sirius ended his preliminary match instantly, his wind magic knocking everyone out flat. He was declared the winner without even trying, a true monster among students. And now, the final match is set. Our boy Will versus the Academy's untouchable prodigy. Will knows that arrogant instructor Bode will never acknowledge him unless he takes the championship. So with a confident smirk, he makes a simple vow. He's going to win this whole thing. Across the arena, Sirius Bluenote gives a simple, almost bored acknowledgement of his opponent. The referee wastes no time, raising his arm and declaring the final match has officially begun. Without a single step, Sirius unleashes his mana, and the air around him begins to violently churn. In an instant, he conjures a monstrous tornado aimed directly at our boy, clearly not holding back. Will is immediately hit by the insane pressure, forced to brace himself against the gale force winds. He channels mana through his entire body, reinforcing his stance and digging his heels into the stone floor. But instead of just defending, Will does the unthinkable and launches himself straight into the raging vortex. For the first time, a flicker of surprise crosses Sirius's face. This trash-tier healer is actually charging him. The sheer power of the tornado is immense, tossing Will around like a leaf in a storm. Our boy grunts in pain, the violent winds threatening to shred him before he can even get close. Will is blown back, realizing that brute force won't let him get anywhere near the Academy's top dog. The two lock eyes across the arena, a silent challenge passing between the prodigy and the regressor. Sirius just sighs, finding Will's speed impressive but ultimately a total drag to deal with. Deciding to end this quickly, he gathers a new sphere of crackling wind magic in his palm. He unleashes a massive, horizontal gale designed not to shred, but to simply blow his opponent away. Our boy digs in his heels, recognizing this isn't a tornado but a wide-area blast meant for a ring-out. He knows at this rate, he's going to be thrown out of bounds, so he starts gathering his own green mana. It's time to pull out his trump card. Will slams his hand onto the stone floor of the arena. In an instant, massive trees and roots erupt from the ground, creating a dense forest to block the wind. In the stands, Erica Glenn is completely dumbfounded, wondering if even that was somehow a form of healing magic. Turns out, this technique was born from a training session with Veronica, who was stunned by his rapid growth. In a flashback, Will confidently asks his professor what she thinks of his new creation. Veronica is just standing there, minding her own business, when a single leaf flutters down onto her head. She looks up to see our boy standing beside a massive tree he just grew, by infusing it with pure life energy. He proudly explains he adapted the idea from offensive plant magic he read about in the library. But just as he's boasting, the immense mana drain from the spell suddenly hits him. He completely collapses, and Veronica has to lunge forward to catch him before he faceplants. She asks if Hez alright, but Hez just shocked that one spell completely emptied his mana reserves. He laughs it off, admitting the textbook conveniently forgot to mention the insane cost of the technique. But Veronica isn't surprised at all, saying she suspected this would happen from the start. She lays it out plain and simple. Destruction is easy, but healing costs a fortune in mana, making his new trick horribly inefficient. Will gets it now. He has to be smart about when he unleashes this trump card. The scene shifts to the tournament finals, and our boy is ready to prove that even a trash-tier offensive mage can dominate. But his opponent is none other than Sirius Bluenote, the Academy's top prodigy, who casually raises his hand. With a flick of his wrist, Sirius sends out wind blades that shred Will's massive tree, muttering a sarcastic whoops. Will is dumbfounded. He had no idea Sirius could pull out attacks like that on a whim. He recalls Sirius's other feats, wide-range tornadoes and pinpoint wind blades, all handled with terrifying ease. Looking at the monster across the arena, Will admits to himself that Sirius is the real deal, a top candidate with no openings. But that doesn't matter. He clenches his fist, determined to get stronger with his own unique magic. The match begins, and Will immediately explodes off the starting line, charging straight into the fray. But Sirius just scoffs from inside his wind barrier, telling Will that no matter what he tries, he'll never reach him. Our boy is sent flying back, seemingly helpless against the overwhelming force of the tornado. Suddenly, Sirius is confused as a clone of Will gets stabbed, realizing it was just a diversion. The real attack was a feint. A tendril shoots up from the ground, catching Sirius off guard and drawing first blood. Will smirks, revealing his trump card. His plant's rhizomes can attack from underground, where the tornado offers no protection. For the first time, the Academy's prodigy is on the back foot, clutching his bleeding shoulder in disbelief. Will presses his advantage, questioning why Sirius is so dedicated to a professor like Bode when they seem completely mismatched. In the stands, the man himself, Bode, watches the exchange with an unreadable, stoic expression. Will continues his psychological assault, pointing out that a noble like Sirius shouldn't need a specific mentor. Sirius grimly admits that in his family, raw magical power is the only thing that has ever mattered. It turns out Sirius comes from a trash-tier family where only the strongest can become the head, making everyone else an enemy. In a dog-eat-dog world like that, he explains that following a powerful professor was his only option to survive and get stronger. Done with the heart-to-heart, Sirius declares the chat is over. His shoulder is throbbing, and he's ready to end this. He unleashes a terrifying amount of mana, summoning a colossal blue dragon that leaves the entire student body absolutely dumbfounded. The massive mana dragon lunges forward with a roar, proving that the prodigy is finally taking this fight seriously. But our boy Will isn't fazed. He reflects that he's actually come to enjoy fighting these so-called offensive geniuses. He realizes that in the heat of battle, things like talent, pedigree, and one's past are all utterly meaningless. With his eyes glowing gold, a new resolve burns within him. He genuinely wants to crush this prodigy right here, right now. Sirius senses the change, asking if that's a declaration of war, but Will just smirks and says he was talking to himself. Then, slamming his hand on a magic circle, our boy announces it's time to unveil his own trump card, his special seed. From that so-called special seed, colossal roots explode from the arena floor. Our boy unleashes his own ultimate technique, summoning the legendary world tree, Yggdrasil. He knows full well that force-growing a plant this massive is a huge drain on his mana, but that's the beauty of it. The more mana he pours in, the stronger it gets, even as the dragon attacks. Sirius's mana dragon lunges forward, a roaring torrent of pure destructive energy. The massive beast coils through the stadium, dead set on swallowing Will and his new tree whole. But the prodigy is left completely stunned as a single leaf gently drifts down onto his head. He looks up to see Will didn't summon a wall. He launched a whole-ass tree at him like a missile. The makeshift projectile soars through the air, a ridiculous yet undeniably powerful attack. Sirius is completely caught off guard, his mind reeling at this unheard-of battle tactic. His mana dragon gets absolutely bodied by the flying tree, leaving Sirius completely dumbfounded. Will knew this plant's vitality was off the charts, growing into a giant from just a tiny branch. In a flash of panic, Sirius realizes that by unleashing his dragon, he left himself wide open. The massive tree slams into the arena floor with devastating force, shaking the entire stadium. He poured everything into that one attack, and now he knows his defenses won't make it in time. The makeshift missile crashes down, completely overwhelming the Academy's #1 student. And just like that, the prodigy is pinned helplessly under the very weapon he failed to stop. Our boy calmly walks up, blade in hand, standing over his defeated rival. With a knife to his neck, a humiliated Sirius can only admit his utter defeat. The declaration echoes through the silent arena. The winner is Will. The stunned crowd finally starts to process the impossible. The healer actually won, and maybe he's the real deal. Sirius hangs his head, utterly broken by his first ever defeat. Will calmly tells him it was a close fight for a prodigy, but ultimately, not good enough. Dumbfounded, Sirius looks up, wondering what he means by not good enough after such an epic clash. But before Will can answer, a voice from the stands crackles with purple energy, expressing its disappointment. Suddenly, a massive blast of purple lightning erupts from the crowd, aimed straight for the arena floor. The attack slams directly into the already defeated Sirius, blasting him out from under the tree. Out of the smoke steps the war hero Bode, the source of the brutal attack on his own student. He grabs the unconscious Sirius by the collar like a sack of potatoes, lifting him with zero effort. With Will watching, Bode declares that Sirius has failed and is being dragged away for some serious retraining. The students in the crowd are completely dumbfounded, whispering that Bode's actions are way too harsh. But Bode isn't done, turning his furious gaze from the arena to the audience itself. He roars that he knows they can't accept a trash-tier healer taking first place either. His sheer killing intent washes over the stands, silencing every last student in an instant. Will watches the war hero drag his rival away, realizing this has gone way too far. Stepping forward, he tries to defend Sirius, stating that it was a close match and his opponent wasn't weak. Enraged, Bode flares his purple aura and snarls at our boy, telling him not to talk back. He stomps towards Will, mocking the very idea of a good fight or showing promise. This veteran declares that on the battlefield, the only thing that matters is raw ability. To prove his point, he hurls Sirius's body at Will, screaming that losers are just trash meant to die. But Will isn't backing down, thinking about how Bode is disrespecting his own student. He stands his ground, declaring that he beat Sirius, proving that a healer's ability isn't something to be mocked. Bode's eyes glow with a terrifying light, his killing intent skyrocketing as he acknowledges the boy's surprising strength. Seeing the situation about to explode, the other instructors quietly make their escape, wanting no part of this. Our boy tries to reason with the war hero, explaining that healers might not fight, but they support everyone else. He passionately argues that it's about a division of roles. If they don't work together, humanity is doomed. For a moment, Bode just stares, his expression unreadable as he processes Will's naive, idealistic words. Suddenly, he grabs Will's shoulder, his voice dripping with venom as he recalls how his own students died protecting the rear guard. He spits that those same rear troops got wiped out by trash-tier monsters while pathetically trying to flee. The source of his rage becomes clear, a flashback to his own students, battered and bloody, who died with nowhere to return to. He roars that healers couldn't even stand on the battlefield, let alone save his students. His eyes burn with contempt, questioning why a prodigy had to fall for the sake of such trash. The war hero's rage explodes as he screams, asking why someone as vital as Sirius had to be the one to lose. But our boy understands his point. Weakness in his past life led to everyone's death. He knows a time is coming when the strong can't afford to be selfish if humanity is to survive. Will clenches his fist, realizing that words won't get through to this man. So he throws down the gauntlet, asking if Bode will finally acknowledge him if he proves his strength right here and now. A dangerous smirk spreads across the war hero's face. He's more than willing to accept this challenge. Back in the arena, Bode, holding the unconscious Sirius, tells the referee to start the match and get the weaklings out. The dumbfounded referee questions if he's serious, but Bode just declares that when it comes to selection, he makes the rules. The referee, still carrying the unconscious Sirius, can only stare as Will stands his ground, ready for another fight. Our boy's expression is pure steel, has not backing down from this war hero. The poor official just sighs in resignation, knowing he has no power to stop what's coming. And so, an impromptu special match is declared, the legend Bode versus the rookie healer Will. The match begins, and Bode cracks his knuckles, a savage grin promising a world of hurt. He immediately channels a terrifying amount of purple lightning, vowing to show Will his trash tier level. Will knows he's in a bad spot. His mana is nearly depleted, and he's facing an absolute monster. Realizing a direct fight is suicide, he quickly starts casting a healing spell to recover. But Bode just scoffs at the move, calling it pathetically slow as he vanishes from his spot. Before Will can even process it, the war hero is right in his face, the speed difference being absolutely insane. Bode unleashes a cataclysmic blast of purple lightning, intending to end the fight before it even starts. The entire arena is engulfed in dust and smoke, with our boy looking like a tiny speck in the chaos. Feeling smug, Bode holds up 3 fingers and begins to lecture on the 3 reasons his victory is absolute. He boasts about his perfect formula: advantageous distance, overwhelming speed, and the power to finish it in one strike. He even taunts the cloud of dust, mockingly asking if Will can even hear him anymore, assuming it's all over. But a voice cuts through the silence, calmly asking what happened to that power to finish in one strike. The smoke clears to reveal Will, kneeling but completely unharmed. Much to Bode's utter shock, our boy knew this was coming. He was well aware of Bode's unique and deadly lightning magic from his past life. He understood that a direct hit to his brain or heart would be fatal, as even his healing couldn't fix that. So, he came up with a genius counter, creating a blood circuit to safely conduct the electricity around his vitals. It was a desperate gamble. By grounding the electricity through his own body, he barely managed to survive the hit. But our boy isn't just surviving, he's already healing himself, ready to launch a counterattack that Bode just scoffs at. The war hero smirks, dismissing Will's survival as a pathetic, tearful effort that won't happen twice. Ignoring the taunt, Will pours mana into his limbs, activating physical enhancement to close the gap in an instant. But as he tries to launch forward, his body seizes up, a sudden wave of paralysis catching him completely off guard. He collapses, dumbfounded, realizing he can't channel any power into his muscles at all. Bode looms over him, explaining the absolute rule of his magic. Anyone touched by his purple lightning is instantly paralyzed. Trapped and helpless, Will makes one last desperate move, mustering just enough control to manifest and hurl a mana knife. Bode catches the trash tier attack effortlessly, but then it hits him. He realizes the knife is made of pure, unstable mana. The blade reacts violently with his own lightning, detonating in a massive explosion right in his hand. The explosion sends shockwaves through the crowd, leaving Erica and the other students absolutely horrified. Still paralyzed by the lingering lightning, Will can only grit his teeth and admit that this war hero is the real deal. Bode just smirks through the smoke, thinking that Will's unique magic is truly seamless and his cocky attitude is well earned. But even so, our boy refuses to stay down, forcing his trembling muscles to respond. A fire ignites in his eyes as he makes a decision: he's not just surviving this fight, he's going to win. With his body locked down, he slams his hand on the ground, betting everything on his last seed, his final magic. He unleashes his plant manipulation, causing a massive, twisted trunk to erupt from the stone floor. Pouring every last drop of mana into it, he commands the water treasure tree to grow to its full potential. In an instant, a colossal tree bursts forth, its glowing green canopy filling the entire arena. This isn't just a desperate move. It's a calculated strategy, as the tree absorbs water to act as a natural shield against lightning. Bode just scoffs, unimpressed by the giant plant, and gathers a terrifying amount of purple lightning. He unleashes a devastating blast, the same kind that wiped the floor with other students, and it slams directly into the tree. The water treasure tree is instantly incinerated, leaving Will kneeling behind the smoldering remains, seemingly out of options. Bode struts forward, mocking him for ending the fight with such a pathetic defensive move. But he stops dead in his tracks, a flicker of confusion on his face as he notices something at the base of the charred trunk. In a flash, dozens of bright red mushrooms begin to sprout from the scorched earth, growing at an unnatural speed. His cocky smirk vanishes, replaced by pure shock as he demands to know what the hell is going on. Will rises to his feet, a knife now in hand, thinking to himself that the plan worked even better than he'd hoped. He explains that a forest fire is the ultimate growth opportunity for certain species, wiping out all the competition. These mushrooms are called foam blowers, and it turns out their rapid growth is the least of Bode's worries. As the mushrooms mature, they release a cloud of spores, and Bode is utterly dumbfounded by the sudden turn of events. A wave of paralysis hits him like a truck. His eyes widen in horror as he realizes his entire body has gone numb. With his opponent completely immobilized, Will sees his opening and charges forward, his fist glowing with crackling green energy. He closes the distance in an instant, ready to deliver a knockout blow to the helpless war hero. But just as our boy is about to connect, Bode's eyes flash with a golden light and a wicked grin spreads across his face. Suddenly, Bode unleashes a torrent of his signature purple lightning, intercepting Will's attack with overwhelming force. The blast hits Will dead on, sending him flying backwards as he coughs up blood from the sheer impact. He collapses to his knees, completely outmatched, while Bode stands over him without a scratch. The war hero scoffs, telling the kid it was idiotic to think he could win in a close-quarters fight. Turns out, Bode's unique magic allows him to manipulate electricity, letting him supercharge his own body to nullify any paralysis. Our boy is on his knees, utterly crushed, wondering if all his training and future knowledge still wasn't enough to win. Bode's eyes glow with triumph as he coldly declares that this is Will's loss. He raises a fist crackling with purple lightning, ready to deliver a final, brutal blow. But just in the nick of time, a sword blocks his path. It's none other than Professor Veronica. She calmly asks him if he isn't taking this a little too far for a simple spar. With an icy stare, she addresses him by his full title, making it clear she's not backing down. The war hero lets out an exasperated sigh, his finishing move completely ruined. He scoffs at Veronica, telling the new hire to stay out of business that doesn't concern her. Will can only look on, completely dumbfounded that his mentor has just stepped in to save him. Veronica declares the match decided, but Bode argues that since Will can heal, the fight should go on. Veronica shuts him down, explaining that healing magic isn't infinite, our boy is completely out of gas. But Bode isn't buying it, roaring that Will just lacks the fighting spirit of a true warrior. Done with the pointless debate, Veronica unleashes her own chilling aura, ready to settle this with steel. The two titans charge, purple lightning clashing against her icy blue power in the middle of the arena. Just as they're about to collide, a powerful voice echoes through the stadium, telling them both, that's enough. A figure descends from above. It's none other than the Alliance chairman himself, the headmaster of the entire academy. He lands with an imposing presence, declaring that two instructors trying to kill each other is the real pointless spectacle here. With a simple gesture, he forces the two hotheads apart, his authority absolute. The chairman looks Bode dead in the eye and tells him to knock it off, his tone leaving no room for argument. A tense stare-down follows, the war hero's fury meeting the chairman's unyielding command. Gritting his teeth, Bode finally relents, his rage simmering down under the chairman's absolute command. The chairman then turns to a confused Veronica, apologizing for not explaining the situation properly. He sighs, clearly exhausted by the drama his top instructors have caused. With the fight over, he officially concludes the training selection exam and orders everyone to leave promptly. The massive crowd begins to file out of the stadium, the epic final match now a part of Academy legend. Meanwhile, our boy Will tries to patch himself up, but his mana reserves are completely shot. He clenches his teeth in frustration, realizing his healing can't keep up, and the gap between him and the top tiers is still massive. Suddenly, Veronica swoops in and effortlessly scoops him up into her arms, leaving him utterly dumbfounded. He can barely stammer out her name, completely shocked by the sudden princess carry from his cold-hearted mentor. But Veronica just looks down at him, telling him he did well and that it's time for him to rest. Still in her arms, Will is completely stunned by this rare moment of gentleness from his ice-cold mentor. He quietly accepts her words, but a fire burns inside him, knowing he has to get stronger. As she carries him off, he thinks to himself that just doing well is nowhere near good enough to change the future. The next day, our boy is fully recovered and walking the halls, the events of the tournament still fresh in his mind. He reflects on the fight, realizing the power of a first-class mage isn't just raw strength, but a whole different level of tactical skill. He remembers the legends from his past life, the chairman, Bode, and Veronica, and how even they couldn't stop humanity's fall. With renewed determination, he arrives at the chairman's office and announces his presence. The Alliance chairman turns, welcoming him as if he was expecting him all along. The chairman notes his swift recovery, and Will confidently explains that once his mana returns, his injuries are a non-issue. Seizing the opportunity, the chairman tells him that if he's so healthy, he's cleared for field training, leaving Will utterly dumbfounded. The chairman reveals that besides Will, Sirius and Erica also passed, leaving Erica completely flabbergasted. Will is confused, pointing out that Professor Bode told everyone they failed and that he didn't even win his match. The chairman just chuckles, explaining that Bode pulls this stunt every year to light a fire under the students and draw out their potential. Our boy thinks back to Bode's intimidating aura and realizes his teacher persona is just way too awkward for its own good. Still, after everything he's been through, he has to admit that Bode's hardcore methods kind of make sense. He recalls how in his past life, Bode was a true hero who fought relentlessly on the front lines, a man with his own unshakable pride. The chairman then drops the real bombshell. Will is to form a party with students from other academies as an offensive mage. This means he'll be taking on actual monster subjugation requests, a reality that hits our boy hard. He realizes this will be his first time facing monsters since regressing, the very same creatures that caused humanity's downfall. The world's lore clarifies that monster just means any creature with magical power, and not all of them are hostile to humanity. Sure, some monsters attack people, but that's just the natural order of things, a fight for survival. If you understood their nature, they could even be humanity's neighbors, a resource to be utilized. But Will knows the bitter truth. In 2 years, the Red Moon will rise, corrupting every monster it touches. Under its crimson light, they'll band together across species, their instincts twisted into pure malice. Goblins will ride bears into battle, slaughtering humans not for food, but for the sheer joy of killing. And 2 years after that, the final nail in the coffin, the Demon King himself, descends. Will remembers the aftermath all too well. Nations burned to ash, as humanity was driven to the brink. Offensive mages and the best knights were sent to the front lines, only to be cut down one by one. Even healers like him, kept safe in the rear, were just lambs for the slaughter once the front lines collapsed. By the time he died, almost no one was left to fight. Humanity was just months away from total extinction. Will clenches his fist, steeling his resolve. He absolutely cannot let that apocalyptic future happen again. He vows to become stronger than anyone from his past life and gain the power to crush the monster invasion. His ultimate goal is to figure out the cause of the Red Moon that drives all monsters into a murderous frenzy. The Alliance chairman sees that familiar fire in his eyes, noting that his determination is as strong as ever. He tells Will that at this rate, he'll be just fine, a polite way of saying the teachers are too cautious for his level. But the chairman leans in, revealing there's something else he needs to discuss with our boy. Will is left a little dumbfounded by the sudden shift in tone. It turns out the chairman has assigned him a special mission, and he's now outside with Veronica and another student. Carriages are already waiting, prepared for an important departure from the academy grounds. Just then, 2 intimidating figures approach. The legendary war hero Bode and his stone-cold aide. Will tries to break the ice, telling Bode's heard the professor's strict guidance comes from a place of genuine care. But Bode just gets right in his face, completely dumbfounded by the comment. He roars that a weakling who couldn't even land a hit shouldn't get cocky, and Will realizes this guy is just as abrasive as ever. The war hero gruffly tells him to shut up and just work hard on the upcoming field training. As he turns to leave, however, he quietly thanks Will for treating Sirius after their brutal match. Suddenly, Sirius himself appears beside Will, adding his own gratitude to his masters. Our boy notes that his once arrogant rival seems unusually quiet and composed. With a fire in his eyes, Sirius declares that thanks to Will, he can now push himself to become even stronger. He credits Bode's brutal philosophy. As long as you survive to get your revenge, it's not a true loss. Will, respecting that fighting spirit, offers a fist bump, telling his new rival to get as strong as he possibly can. Sirius cracks a small smile as they bump fists, a silent acknowledgement of their newfound rivalry. With their business concluded, The two powerhouses part ways, each ready for their next challenge. As Bode climbs into his carriage, he reflects that having more top-tier offensive mages will be crucial for the war against the monsters. Across the courtyard, Veronica calls out to Will, telling him it's time for their own team to get a move on. Our boy flashes a confident smile, replying that he's coming right over to join his new party. Soon, their carriage is barreling through the wilderness, making its way toward the ominous Dunkel forest. Inside, Veronica lays out the plan. Their first mission is a goblin subjugation request in the heart of the forest. She explains their special team will be a 4-person party with students from 3 different academies, which makes Erica nervously ask if the members are already set. Veronica confirms Erica is with them, and the poor girl immediately freaks out, thinking that while it's better than strangers, her professor is absolutely terrifying. As the carriage slows to a halt, Will gazes out the window, realizing they've arrived and that his party is going to be quite the handful. Veronica steps out of the carriage, announcing that their 4th member, the participant from Silburn Academy, has arrived. The name Silburn rings a bell for Will. He remembers the academy from his past life, but never had any dealings with them. Suddenly, an overjoyed voice screams his name. Before he can react, a blonde girl leaps into his arms, exclaiming that she's been waiting for this day forever. The sudden ambush leaves everyone completely dumbfounded. Erica is horrified, Veronica is unimpressed, and Will is just plain confused. Our boy tries to pry her off, stammering that he has absolutely no idea who she is. She pulls back slightly, a little dejected but understanding his confusion. The girl admits it's her fault, since they never got a chance to properly talk back then. She gracefully introduces herself as Marie Goldgran, the granddaughter of Schwarz Academia's headmaster. The name hits Will like a lightning bolt, as he flashes back to the near-dead girl he healed to get into the academy in the first place. Will can't quite believe it's her. He asks how she's been, and she energetically declares she's perfectly fine now. He tries to brush it off, saying her grandfather's recommendation to the academy was more than enough thanks. But Marie is having none of that, insisting she desperately wanted to repay the favor herself. She explains that with no talent for magic, she enrolled in Silburn Academy and dedicated herself completely to the art of the sword. And she didn't just get by, she absolutely crushed it, taking the top spot in the academy's selection exam. With a little laugh, she admits she found her true talent with the blade, leaving our boy completely dumbfounded. Will is internally reeling, thinking this girl is a straight-up monster for going from bedridden to top of her class in no time. She grabs his hand with fierce determination, vowing that she'll be a great help to her savior, Master Will. This, she explains, is why they've been placed in the same party, and Will can only agree to do their best together. As they walk off, it finally dawns on Will what the headmaster meant by counting on you he's been paired with a powerhouse. Marie is fired up, announcing that someone from Heilich has arrived, and excitedly drags Will along to greet them. As they approach a fancy carriage, they wonder where the rest of their party members could possibly be. Marie peeks into the carriage, calling out for a Master Ren and Master Turf. The name Ren immediately catches Will's attention, and he freezes on the spot. A voice from inside tells them to chill out. As the carriage door swings open, a man with reddish-purple hair steps out, introducing himself as Ren Kaitos, a teacher from Heilich. Our boy is completely thunderstruck, recognizing the man in front of him as his old mentor. His mind flashes back to his past life, remembering Ren as the one who taught him healing magic. Will knows this man isn't just any teacher. He's the greatest healer he has ever known. The sheer shock of being in the same party as his former master leaves Will speechless, much to Marie and Ren's confusion. A nerdy-looking kid pops out from behind Ren, asking his teacher to move so he can get out of the carriage. Marie cheerfully introduces herself, guessing that this must be the final member of their party, Master Turf. The boy, Turf, shyly pushes up his glasses and stammers out a nervous greeting, clearly a bit overwhelmed. His eyes then dart down to Will and Marie holding hands, and the poor guy looks absolutely scandalized. Turf turns his attention to our boy, pointedly asking just who he is. Will introduces himself as a student from Schwarz, and Turf seems to size him up, muttering about him being an offensive mage. Ren claps his hands together, declaring the group formed, and telling Will he can basically do whatever he wants. While Marie is taken aback by this hands-off approach, Will just smirks, knowing this is exactly how his mentor operates. Will walks up beside his old master and asks if he can call him mentor, leaving Ren completely dumbfounded. Will smoothly explains that since he can use healing magic but lacks a teacher, he'd like to learn from Ren. Ren is taken aback, finding it bizarre for a supposed offensive mage to also be a healer. He vaguely recalls hearing rumors about Will's unique talents, and realizes this party assignment was no coincidence. When Will presses the issue, a flustered Ren just waves his hands and tells him to call him whatever he wants. Marie, ever the enthusiast, immediately chimes in, declaring she'll call him Master teacher too, much to Turf's shock. As the newly formed party runs off, Marie is just thrilled they're all getting along so quickly. Ren leads them to a cabin deep in the woods, announcing it as their base of operations for the subjugation mission. He explains the plan. He, Will, and Marie will head for the Goblin territory, while Turf stays back, since healers don't belong on the front lines. As they set off, Turf is completely baffled, wondering why Ren, a master healer, is heading straight into the fight. Ren just smirks, telling them he's not a fan of stuffy formalities and they can do whatever they want. As a horde of goblins emerges from the trees, Marie eagerly declares she'll take him up on that offer. Our boy Will, already knowing the answer, cheekily asks if not holding back means what he thinks it means. With a terrifyingly cheerful grin, Marie confirms his suspicions, absolutely ready to go all out. She hefts her colossal spear, pouring all her might into it for one devastating attack. In a flash of red light, she unleashes a monstrous whirlwind strike, carving right through the goblin ranks. Just like that, it's over, and she stands victorious over a pile of bodies, leaving Will utterly dumbfounded. He can't believe his eyes. This is the same girl he remembers being on her deathbed from an incurable disease. But now, thanks to him, she's a one-woman army, cheerfully looking for his praise after the slaughter. Marie continues her brutal dance, slicing through goblins with a ferocious grace. Will can only watch in awe, realizing every single one of her strikes is packed with immense power. But for a split second, her confidence wavers as she realizes the true scale of the problem. Turns out, she's standing in front of an entire army of them, and they just keep coming. Suddenly, Ren appears beside Will, calmly pointing out that while she's impressive, she leaves herself wide open. And just as he says it, the goblins swarm in, proving his point as Marie gets surrounded. Ren wastes no time, ordering Will to cover her while he and Turf watch from the back lines. A fire ignites in our boy's eyes. This is it, his first real monster fight in this new life. The goblins are nothing like the academy students he's faced. They're feral, powerful beasts. But Will remains stone-faced, calmly analyzing the threat before him, ready to make his move. Just as he's about to leap in, Ren puts a hand on his shoulder, asking why he's so tensed up. With a smug grin, his old mentor tells him to just relax. It's only a few trash-tier monsters. A small smile creeps onto Will's face as he realizes Ren is exactly the same as he remembers, a comforting and familiar presence. Taking a deep breath, our boy activates his signature body enhancement, flooding his limbs with crackling green mana. He launches himself forward like a cannonball, a blur of energy streaking directly towards the overwhelmed Marie. In less than a second, he's right beside her, their backs pressed together as they face the horde. Marie doesn't miss a beat, telling him to handle his side of the fight as they prepare to unleash hell. As they tear through the goblins, she's dumbfounded, finally realizing this is what he meant by weaponizing recovery magic. Watching from the back, Ren gives a slight nod of approval, admitting to himself that the kid isn't half bad. Will stands over a pile of goblin corpses, confirming that his unique combat style is just as lethal against monsters. Will admires the quality of the knife from Veronica, thinking it's leagues above the one he swiped from that loser Ulpus. Marie, on the other hand, is completely starstruck, fawning over Will's brilliant sword strokes and calling him magnificent. Their mentor Ren steps in between them, deciding that's quite enough action for the first day. With a stretch, he announces they're heading back, putting an end to the post-battle hype. On the way, Marie suddenly feels her body is incredibly light, and Will explains that's all thanks to their master. Our boy begins to explain that while healing is usually measured by the severity of wounds, Ren is on another level. His true strength lies in the insane speed of his recovery, healing so fast you don't even notice the magic being cast. Because of this subtlety, only another recovery mage could ever truly appreciate how ridiculously skilled he is. Will recalls asking him about it, but Ren just said he doesn't have time for a big show. If you're healed, that's all that matters. It's this raw, unflashy power that Will admires, a master whose true greatness the world never even noticed. To Will, there's no debate. The true world's greatest recovery mage is his master, Ren Kaitos. Later that night, the newly formed party settles in for a meal at their base. Ren casually declares their first outing a success, giving them a passing grade for the day's work. Turf humbly says he didn't do much, since everyone came back without a scratch. But Ren corrects him, saying a healer's duty also includes providing a good recovery meal, and the soup is excellent. He then smugly takes credit for the flavor, offering Turf some of his special spices. Marie is completely amazed, wondering how their master knows so much about the front lines for a recovery mage. Ren just shrugs, explaining that if you want to treat the most injured people, you have to go where the fighting is thickest. Turf chimes in, revealing that the professor is always visiting dangerous sites, which is why he's rarely in a classroom. Marie gets worried, but Ren just smirks, completely confident in his legendary ability to get the hell out of Dodge. As the others talk, Will quietly eats, mulling over his master's words and the memories they stir up. Our boy knows Ren's tough talk is just a front. He'd never actually run if someone's life was on the line. He's haunted by the past, remembering how the loss of his master was a devastating blow for all of humanity. It wasn't just his healing. Ren was one of the few recovery mages who knew how to survive in the thick of a real battle. Back in the present, Ren feels that while the timeline has shifted, a certain catastrophic incident is still looming. A fire ignites in Will's eyes as he makes a silent vow. This time, he will not let his master die. The team's lighthearted banter continues into the night as they bond over a simple meal. But far away, a sinister figure stands before a massive horde of goblins, preparing for an assault. He channels the wicked power of the red moon, pouring its energy into a pulsating dark crystal. The magic surges through the goblin army, their eyes flaring a menacing red as they await their orders. The goblin horde roars, now transformed into monstrous shadows of their former selves. The next day, our crew heads out for another round of goblin hunting, feeling pretty good about themselves. After their last battle, their teamwork has improved tenfold, and they figure they can wrap this quest up in a day. But as they venture deeper, Will gets a sudden chill down his spine. Something feels terribly wrong. Ren, the seasoned veteran, abruptly stops the party and declares they're turning back immediately. Marie is completely dumbfounded, asking why they're retreating when they haven't even seen a single monster. Ren's face is grim as he explains that's exactly the problem. The forest is dead silent. He knows goblins are fiercely territorial, so the fact that none have attacked means something is seriously off. Will agrees, realizing that in the field, you always trust your gut when it's screaming at you like this. With the decision made, Ren calls off the hunt and suggests they find another party nearby for safety. Marie recalls that a party led by a certain Veronica should have their base nearby. Ren smirks, impressed by her research, and agrees they should drop by. But as they head over, Will can't shake a gut feeling that this is completely out of character and a terrible idea. The closer they get to the neighboring party's base, the more Will's past life trauma starts to creep in. He pushes aside some bushes to scout ahead, and is left absolutely dumbfounded by the scene. It's Erica Glenn, beaten and tied to a post, a blatant, horrifying trap laid out for them. Marie doesn't hesitate for a second, shouting that she's coming to help as she charges forward. But just as she nears Erica, the ground erupts and ensnares her in a powerful earth trap. Will can only scream her name in pure terror, watching his friend get taken down. Before Marie can even process what happened, a hand grabs her sword from behind, completely neutralizing her. Marie struggles against the earth magic, completely caught off guard. But a second later, she pops out of the hole, cheekily declaring that she's totally unharmed. Will watches in horror, the pieces clicking together. Erica wasn't the target, she was just the bait. Before he can react, Ren shouts out a warning that more enemies are closing in on them fast. A volley of arrows suddenly flies out from the trees, and our boy has to act fast just to deflect them. And then they appear, a massive, organized horde of goblins, looking far more dangerous than trash-tier mobs. With Marie still on the ground and disarmed, she's a sitting duck as the enemy closes in. Will takes a breath and realizes the horrifying truth. They are completely surrounded. A chilling memory from his past life surfaces. This isn't a random ambush. They're being hunted with cunning tactics. Hez dumbfounded. These are the movements of monsters after the red moon. But that apocalyptic event isn't supposed to happen for another 2 years. Just as panic sets in, Will spots Erica tied to a tree. He's horrified but relieved she's still alive. He steels himself, realizing this is the exact kind of crisis he gained all this power to overcome. Marie and Ren are holding the line, glad Erica's okay but realizing they are completely swamped by the sheer number of goblins. But our boy steps up confidently, telling them to leave it to him. He's got a new trick he learned from a classmate. He slams his hand on the ground, pouring his green mana directly into the earth beneath them. In an instant, massive wood golems erupt from the soil, towering over the stunned goblins. Will tells Marie to fall back, explaining that she doesn't need to waste her energy on the front lines. His golems smash through the enemy's sloppy formation, creating the perfect opening for a counterattack. Instead of fighting grunts, he tells her to focus everything on charging up one huge, decisive blow. As Marie gathers a blinding aura of power, Will digs his heels in, ready to support her attack. With the path cleared, Marie unleashes a blinding wave of energy that rips through the goblin horde. She flashes a smug grin, asking how they like her all-out strike. Any goblins that survive the initial blast are quickly cut down by her relentless swordplay. Will moves in perfect sync, taking out any stragglers that slip past Marie's guard. Ren gives them a thumbs up for the solid teamwork and announces he's going to rescue Erica. Will tells him to go for it, casually dispatching another goblin while his back is turned. But as he turns, a sudden horrible feeling washes over him, wiping the smile right off his face. A cold dread grips him as he realizes what's happening. Ren, running toward Erica, suddenly freezes in his tracks as he senses it too. The ground begins to tremble violently as an immense, terrifying presence makes itself known. The source of that terrifying presence is a massive ogre, erupting from the ground right in front of Ren. Even Will, while busy carving up goblins, is stunned to realize the beast was hiding right under their feet. Ren knows he's out of position. There's no way he can reach Erica before this monster gets to her. The sight triggers Will's PTSD, flashing him back to his master's words from the old timeline. A true healer never abandons the wounded. He screams in terror for his master as the ogre winds up a devastating, mana-infused punch. That single blow is meant to turn Ren into nothing more than a red stain on the forest floor. But just before impact, Ren's entire body crackles to life with an intense, familiar green energy. In a flash of light, he blitzes forward, moving so fast he leaves an afterimage in his wake. He glances back with a cocky smirk, clearly impressed with the results of his new technique. Our boy Will is left completely dumbfounded, questioning if his master just weaponized healing magic for both enhancement and attack. The enraged ogre swings wildly, completely bamboozled by Ren's sudden burst of speed. But it's too late. Ren has already zipped past the clumsy attack and is now right behind the beast. Before the monster can even turn around, Ren closes the distance in an instant, getting right in its face. He casually places a hand on its head, wishes it a good night, and unleashes a devastating blast of pure healing energy. The ogre is sent flying, its eyes wide with shock as its brain gets overloaded by the concentrated life force. Will runs up to his master, completely floored, and asks him just what that insane technique was. Ren just gives a smug grin, admitting he learned from his student and literally just came up with the move on the spot. Will can't help but smile, thinking his master is as badass as ever, while Marie runs up cheering about how cool it was. As Ren starts untying Erica from the post, he tells the group they should use this chance to withdraw. But Will isn't having it, asking why they're running when Ren clearly has the power to wipe out all the enemies here. Surrounded by monsters, Will is still stuck on why his master is holding back. Ren calmly explains that he didn't kill the ogre, he just put it to sleep, leaving our boy completely dumbfounded. Turns out, as a healer, Ren refuses to harm any creature, even a monster. He tells them that by the time it wakes up, the ogre will be fully healed as they make their escape. Will can't help but crack a smile, realizing his master is a true softie at his core. With that settled, the group easily breaks through the goblin encirclement and bolts. After they repelled the initial wave, the rest of the trash-tier goblins apparently lost their nerve and backed off. Finding a safe clearing, Ren gently lays Erica down, figuring they can finally catch their breath. He immediately starts channeling healing magic into her, telling the unconscious girl to wake up. Erica's eyes snap open in a panic, but Will is quick to reassure her that she's finally safe. Will cuts right to the chase, asking Erica what happened and why she was out here all alone. The question sends her into a panic as the memories come flooding back. She starts explaining that yesterday's subjugation mission was actually going great, and she was pulling her weight. But the moment she got a little overconfident, everything predictably fell apart. Turns out, when she woke up the next morning, their supervising instructor, Miss Veronica, had vanished. Will is dumbfounded to hear that Veronica, of all people, was the one leading her team. All the legendary professor left behind was a vague note telling them to stand by. With no idea when she'd be back, her teammates ganged up on her and pushed her to go searching. Will connects the dots, scolding her for being a pushover when she could have easily died. He clenches his fist in anger, realizing she was sent out completely unprepared for a real battle. Erica explains she smelled something sweet in the forest, and the next thing she knew, she woke up here. Ren is pissed, realizing the goblins used a sleeping agent. Their tactics are getting way too sophisticated. He shelves the mystery for now, deciding they need to regroup with Erica's other two teammates at their base. As Erica leads the way, she suddenly stops dead in her tracks. Her face drains of all color, her eyes wide with pure shock. The party arrives to find the base completely annihilated, reduced to nothing but splintered wood. Marie calmly states that she did some research on the area beforehand. She explains that goblins are extremely territorial, so a base outside their turf should have been perfectly safe. Looking at the wreckage, she wonders why, against all logic, they would launch such a suicidal attack. Our boy Will knows something's up. This aggressive behavior reminds him of the Red Moon from his past life. Ren Kaitos, their instructor, inspects the wreckage and concludes there was no fight. The other two students just bailed. He decides to split up, telling the trio to meet with their fourth member, Turf, while he tracks down the cowards. With a final warning that nowhere is safe, he sends them on their way. The party rushes back to their main base, with Will desperately calling out for Turf. They find him completely oblivious, stirring a pot and wondering why they're back so early for lunch. Marie is so relieved that she grabs his hands, leaving the poor boy utterly dumbfounded. But Will cuts the reunion short, his instincts screaming that they need to get out of there, now. Suddenly, our boy freezes, a cold sweat trickling down his face as he senses an unwelcome presence. The girls look on in confusion as Will's entire demeanor shifts into high alert. He confirms his worst fear: a massive goblin warrior is lying in wait just outside, proving they were followed the whole time. Erica immediately panics, screaming about what they're supposed to do now that they're cornered. But Will is surprisingly calm, quietly thinking to himself how useless he's been this whole time. The girls are completely baffled by his sudden self-deprecation, wondering what he could possibly mean. He then turns with a confident smirk, declaring that the three of them are going to take the enemy down together. Even as the full scale of the goblin horde is revealed, our boy is dead certain they can win this. He knows they're massively outnumbered, and lays out the core strategy. Perfect teamwork is their only path to victory. Will immediately takes command, ordering Marie to hold her position and attack from a distance instead of charging in. To back up his plan, he summons a massive wood golem to act as their frontline tank. He then turns to Erica, telling her to use her flames to halt the goblins' advance, but she's crippled by self-doubt. With a reassuring smile, Will promises her that her power is exactly what they need to make a difference. Stunned by his confidence in her, Erica can only stare back, completely speechless. But his faith sparks something inside her, and with a desperate cry, she unleashes her flame magic. A massive wall of fire erupts from the ground, incinerating the front lines of the goblin horde. She's in total shock, realizing her supposedly trash-tier magic actually worked wonders. Will smirks, thinking his plan is flawless, but his satisfaction is cut short as he notices something is wrong. A hulking figure emerges from the inferno, completely unfazed by the flames that roasted its brethren. Our boy's face hardens. He knows this horned ogre is on a whole different level than the cannon fodder. The beast proves it by effortlessly shattering his wood golem, leaving Will dumbfounded for a split second. Thinking on his feet, he immediately barks a new order, telling Erica to set his own golem ablaze. The flaming golem becomes a living bomb, grappling with the ogre in a fiery death hug. Will yells for Marie, who grins back, already knowing her part in the plan. She unleashes a devastating golden slash, cleaving right through the flaming ogre and sending it crashing down. Marie and Erica celebrate their perfect teamwork with a high five, thinking the fight is over. But Will isn't celebrating. He admits their coordination was good, but a gut feeling tells him it's not enough. Turns out he was right, as the ogre's wounds start bubbling and healing at an insane rate. Marie asks if they just need to wail on it until it stops regenerating, but Will looks seriously concerned. He realizes there's no guarantee they can outdamage its healing, and that they need a more solid strategy. Suddenly, our boy feels a new threat approaching and yells for his team to get ready. Out of nowhere, a massive red beam of energy blasts down, forcing Will to block it with everything he's got. The attacker is revealed. Another goblin, but this one is clearly cut from a different cloth, lunging at him with a blade. The regenerating ogre reveals a disgusting new tactic, using its smaller goblin allies as living projectiles. Will is too busy dodging the magic user's attacks, realizing these long-range fighters are a serious pain. Just as he's occupied, another goblin rushes Erica, who panics, thinking she's a goner. But before it can land a hit, Marie swoops in like a Valkyrie, blasting the trash-tier mob into oblivion. With a fierce grin, Marie tells Erica that it's payback time for ambushing them. She unleashes a massive swing of her weapon, creating a golden shockwave to keep the monsters at bay. Seeing the determined look on Will's face, Marie knows he's cooked up a strategy and tells him to leave this spot to her. Trusting her completely, our boy shouts his thanks and makes a dead sprint toward the real threat. His plan is simple. Erica's area of effect magic holds back the horde, while Marie counters the flying goblins. With his teammates covering all the angles, all that's left is for Will to go one-on-one with the big boss ogre. As the ogre glares with pure malice, our boy zips past its clumsy swing, closing the distance in a flash. Will weaves through a flurry of attacks, a blur of motion as he lands several precise strikes on the beast. The monster roars in frustration, managing to land a shallow cut on Will's arm, but it's nothing our boy can't handle. Unfazed, Will smirks, telling the brute that its defense is full of holes. He slaps his hand onto the ogre's chest, declaring this was the moment he was waiting for, and unleashes Life Surge Rampage. The green magic floods the ogre's system, targeting its heart and forcing it to pump uncontrollably. The monster is completely dumbfounded, clutching its chest as its own body begins to betray it from the inside. With a sickening pop, the ogre's head just explodes in a shower of gore. Will lands gracefully, not even bothering to look back as the massive, headless corpse collapses behind him. He reveals his master plan. He overloaded the ogre's regeneration, turning its greatest strength into a self-destruct button. With the ogre dealt with, Will smirks and says it's time to clean up the remaining trash-tier goblins. He moves like a blur, his life force blade decapitating and slicing through the fodder monsters with ease. Meanwhile, Marie proves she's no damsel in distress. Standing proudly amidst a mountain of goblin corpses, she dispatched herself. Will looks over the battlefield, satisfied that their pincer attack worked perfectly. Erica Glenn, their other teammate, looks completely drained, barely processing that they actually won. But Marie is bursting with energy, grabbing both Will and Erica in a celebratory hug, shouting about their complete victory. Our boy smoothly puts his arms around them, praising their teamwork, as a flustered Erica admits they somehow managed to pull through. The celebration is cut short when Will's expression hardens. He senses a massive power spike and reminds them the mission isn't over. They all look up to see a colossal tornado of blue mana in the distance, a power signature Marie instantly identifies as belonging to Sirius. Will immediately forms a plan, telling the girls they need to head towards that magical storm to regroup with the other teams. They arrive to find Sirius Blue Note standing alone, the air still crackling with the raw power he just unleashed. His own teammates rush in, shouting his name and asking if he's alright after that insane display. Will's squad finally links up with him, and Sirius looks relieved, glad to see they're all in one piece. Just then, another team led by the war hero Bode arrives, who immediately notices something's off with their formation, asking where the instructors are. Out of nowhere, Will's old mentor Ren Kaitos appears with his own students, smugly announcing that he's found them. Will rushes over to his master, who explains that Sirius's mana tornado was the perfect beacon to follow. Ren gives our boy a proud pat on the shoulder, telling him he did well and that he's glad to see his team is unscathed. Will can't help but smile, with Marie and Erica looking on, proud of their little squad's performance. But Bode cuts the reunion short, a grim look on his face as he realizes they're still missing someone important. He shouts out that their instructor, Veronica, is nowhere to be found, admitting that while she's a beast, they can't just abandon her. Ren Kaitos immediately takes charge, deciding to split the teams and watch over the weaker students himself. He orders the two powerhouses, Will and Sirius, to go and find their missing instructor. Our boy heads into the woods alone, deciding to use his unique magic to enhance his hearing and track any life signs. He knows the technique isn't precise, so he has to concentrate and search slowly to pinpoint her location. And just like that, he finds her walking through the forest, a wave of relief washing over him as she seems to be perfectly fine. But as he calls out her name, he notices something is terribly wrong with the scene. Veronica is clutching a sinister red crystal, its dark energy pulsing around her as she turns with an unnerving calm. Will is absolutely dumbfounded. That ominous red glow is the same energy from the red moon, a harbinger of doom from his past life. He rushes out to confront her, but Veronica just looks at him blankly, asking what he's doing here. Will tries to explain that the monsters are everywhere and the training is cancelled, but her confused reaction just raises more red flags. Veronica casually agrees to head back, but Will is still reeling from the sight of that sinister crystal. He can't just let it go and yells for her to wait a second. Our boy demands to know what that ominous stone was that she was just holding. She just brushes him off, claiming it was nothing at all. Will presses her, asking what she was doing out here alone, leaving her students behind. He clenches his fist, demanding an answer, but she just stands there in silence. Suddenly, she apologizes, saying she has no other options as she draws a glowing ornate dagger. With a chilling look, she warns him it would be better for everyone if he just kept quiet about this. She then walks away, telling him not to worry, which only makes him more suspicious. Will feels utterly powerless to question her further, just as his old mentor, Ren Kaitos, spots them with a knowing smirk. Will reflects on the end of the field training, admitting he just can't bring himself to doubt Veronica. After all, she was one of his most trusted allies in his past life, which makes this whole situation a mess. He barely slept, his mind racing with the horrifying thought that she might be involved with the Red Moon. As he walks through the academy halls, his train of thought is suddenly derailed. He spots Veronica up ahead, talking with some guy he's never seen before. Our boy is dumbfounded. She's not wearing her usual instructor robes, but a stark white uniform. Wasting no time, he quickly casts a presence concealment spell to go full-on stealth mode. Hiding behind a pillar, he strains to overhear what his former comrade is up to. The man confirms her leave request has been accepted, and casually asks where she's off to. She just blows him off, claiming it's personal business as she walks away, leaving Will with more questions than answers. Will's mind races. He can't shake the feeling her personal business is tied to that cursed red stone. There's only one way to find out. He decides he has to follow her, no matter the risk. Veronica walks through a nearby town, her white uniform standing out against the peaceful backdrop. Our boy keeps his distance, using the crowds to stay hidden as he tails his former mentor. He knows he's acting on pure impulse, following her without a concrete plan. For a second, he hesitates, realizing that if he's wrong, he's nothing more than a common stalker. But then the horrific memories of the war flash before his eyes, reminding him of what's at stake. He pushes his doubts aside. He has to do this, not just to stop a tragedy, but to clear Veronica's name. As he moves through the streets, a strange sense of déjà vu washes over him. He suddenly remembers being dispatched to this very city in his past life, right after the monster threat exploded. He recalls that this was the exact time the city fell into chaos in his past life. But before he can dwell on it, Veronica casually stops at a local bakery. To his utter shock, she turns and offers him some honey bread. She knew he was following her all along. Our boy takes a bite and is absolutely floored by how good it is, while Veronica smirks, proud of her find. He awkwardly admits Hez from a rural area and asks if this is a common treat for a city merchant's daughter like her. She confirms it, but explains it's become a personal rule for her to stop at any bakery she finds. Veronica recounts her life, from business trips with her parents to marching across countless battlefields. She somberly explains that most of the people she met are gone, lost to war or time. To avoid the crushing weight of regret, she's forbidden herself from ever saying later and putting things off. Will is dumbfounded, finally understanding that her blunt, almost harsh demeanor is just her way of living life to the fullest. Veronica casually adds that she doesn't know when she'll die either, which visibly rattles Will, who tells her not to say such sad things. She explains it's not about being pessimistic, it's about living life to the absolute fullest, because you never know when it's over. Turning back with a smirk, she puts him on the spot, asking if that means he's going to be the one to protect her. Without a shred of doubt, our boy flashes a confident smile and promises that he absolutely will. But that promise is drenched in the regret of his past life, where he remembers failing to save her and clenches his fist in frustration. He steels his resolve, realizing that to protect her this time, he needs to see the truth of this world with his own eyes. Back in the present, Veronica heads off on her own, and a determined Will decides to shadow her from a distance. She leads him down a dark, suspicious-looking alleyway, and Will's gut tells him something is definitely not right. Worried for her safety, he decides to get closer, casting a spell to completely conceal his presence. At the end of the alley, she approaches a massive iron gate that creaks open as if it was waiting for her. Will slips inside, only to be stopped in his tracks by the sound of voices. He quickly ducks behind a pillar as he hears someone say they've been waiting for her. Turns out, Veronica is meeting a shady-looking figure in a dark robe who claims this is a matter of great importance. The man pulls back his hood, revealing a sinister grin as he demands to see what she's brought. Without a word, Veronica reaches into her uniform, preparing to hand something over. She presents a brilliant red crystal, and the man is utterly stunned by its presence. His eyes go wide with a mix of shock and obsession as he stares at the artifact. He snatches the crystal and holds it to the light, maniacally calling it a lovely sight. The man praises her talent, and Veronica coldly agrees, saying she always believed in her own abilities. As the man mentions this brings them closer to the cult's desire, Will is left speechless, realizing the woman he swore to protect is mixed up in some dark business. The cultist cackles that they are one step closer to the manifestation of the Red Moon, and Will is completely shocked. It all clicks for our boy. This is somehow connected to the Red Moon, and he stumbled upon a dangerous cult. In his agitation, Will's mana flares up, instantly alerting both Veronica and the cultist to his presence. He panics, realizing his presence concealment has been broken, as Veronica moves in a blur. Our boy is completely frozen, dumbfounded that he's been caught so easily. All he can do is call out her name, still trying to make sense of the situation. In an instant, Veronica has her blade to his throat, coldly confirming that he followed her. She then summons a massive, intimidating water dragon, making it clear she's not playing around. The cultist smugly reminds her that he warned her to come alone. He then feigns sadness, saying she broke their promise and that he was hoping to gain a new cult member. Veronica tries to play it off, telling the cultist that Will showing up was a complete accident. The cultist smirks, seeing an opportunity to test her loyalty by telling her to dispose of the witness. Our boy is absolutely floored, thinking for a split second that his own professor might actually kill him. But in a flash, Veronica turns her blade on the cultist, revealing this was never a friendly meeting. She coldly states that this was purely an investigation and she'd never sacrifice her precious student. Will scrambles to his feet, apologizing for the intrusion, but demanding to know what's going on. She finally relents, admitting that keeping him in the dark about her mission was a mistake. Veronica begins her story, explaining that it all started when she sensed something off in the forest. She found herself surrounded by a horde of monsters that had gone completely berserk, and at the heart of the chaos, she discovered the source, a single, ominous red stone. Holding the stone, Veronica felt a strange, familiar energy pulsing from within it. Out of curiosity, she poured her own mana into the artifact, causing it to emit an ominous red glow. Suddenly, a shady figure in a dark robe emerged from the shadows, thrilled to find a potential new comrade. The cultist called their meeting a sign of guidance, but Veronica just cut him off, demanding to know who he was. He dodged the question with a smug grin, claiming that the rules of his organization prevented him from saying too much. Instead, he offered her a deal, laying out 2 conditions if she wanted to learn the truth about the stone and his cult. First, she had to keep the stone lit to prove her qualifications, and second, she had to come to a secret meeting alone to prove her loyalty. The cultist then gave a fake apology for testing her, his slimy expression making it clear he wasn't sorry at all. He confessed that he truly hoped she would become one of them, but Veronica's icy glare showed she was having none of it. Back in the present, she explains to Will that her plan was always to accept the offer and go undercover to dismantle the cult from the inside. Will is still trying to wrap his head around her story, remembering how intimidating she was when they first met. He admits her explanation is so vague it tells him nothing, and to his surprise, she actually apologizes. Our boy just smiles, relieved that at the end of the day, Professor Veronica isn't actually a bad person. The story flashes back to the cultist, who realizes Veronica never intended to join and says this revelation only makes him sad. He holds up a red crystal, his expression making it clear his sadness is just a prelude to violence. The cultist declares that since she won't join, he must dispose of such a talented person and promptly throws the stone into the water. Will is dumbfounded, questioning why the cultist would just toss away the very stone he used to test her. But this was no ordinary rock. It begins to glow with an ominous, powerful light from beneath the surface. From the depths, sinister shadows with glowing red eyes start to form, summoned by the artifact's magic. A monstrous, multi-headed hydra erupts from the water, its roars echoing as it prepares to attack Veronica on the cultist's command. The cultist looks on with glee, marveling at the sheer feral power he's just unleashed. Watching the memory, Will is shocked to see so many water dragons emerge at once. He counts 8 heads and bravely tells Veronica he'll take on half of them, but Veronica immediately shuts down his heroic offer. She tells him his help won't be necessary as she charges forward alone. With a surge of energy, she unleashes her signature move, Magic Sword, Gale. In a brilliant flash, her blade cleaves through several of the Hydra's heads in a single, fluid motion. Will can only watch, completely impressed by his professor's overwhelming skill. Veronica, however, senses that the fight is far from over. The Hydra regenerates instantly, whipping its massive tail around for a devastating counterattack. Veronica lands neatly after dodging the blow, assuring a worried Will that she's fine. They're both left dumbfounded as the Hydra's severed necks bubble and reform in a grotesque display. Will is completely baffled. He knows for a fact that no healing magic in existence could pull off this kind of instant regeneration. A cold sweat trickles down his face as he realizes something is fundamentally wrong with this monster. This isn't just a high-tier beast with crazy regenerative powers. It's something else entirely. Suddenly, our boy connects the dots, a grim understanding washing over him. As the Hydra lunges again, Will doesn't hesitate, weaving past its attacks to get right up close. He slaps his hand directly onto the creature's body, channeling his senses to analyze its composition. Just as he thought the body feels soft and boneless, confirming his wild theory. With a grunt, he grabs the scaly hide and pulls, revealing that this entire monster is just a high-level illusion. With the illusion figured out, Will yells at Veronica to get back so he can test his theory. She trusts his judgment, leaping away but warning him not to get himself killed. Our boy just grins, thinking he's about to get very reckless as he activates his physical enhancement. Pouring power into his body, he digs his heels in and gets a solid grip on the fake Hydra's hide. With a furious roar, he demands the real monster show itself, ripping a colossal octopus-like creature right out of the ground. Veronica is completely dumbfounded, finally understanding why beheading the creature did absolutely nothing. The horrifying truth dawns on her. She wasn't fighting its heads, she was fighting its legs. The true enemy is revealed a boneless monstrosity called the Octodraco, a grotesque fusion of beasts. Suddenly, a new voice chimes in, mockingly congratulating Will for seeing through the illusion so quickly. The camera pans to the smug, purple-haired cultist, who seems way too pleased with the chaos he's unleashed. The cultist scoffs, explaining that the Octodraco is just a trash-tier obstacle and that their goals are far grander than simple combat. He decides this little skirmish has gone on long enough and is now interfering with the cult's master plan. Announcing his name is Aruto, he declares he's taking matters into his own hands, summoning a menacing, dark energy mace. But Will isn't even looking at him. Instead, he tells Veronica to take care of the monster. He points out her magic sword is perfect for the soft-bodied beast, the horrors of his past life flashing before his eyes. Veronica immediately objects, stating she can't possibly allow a student to face that kind of danger alone. Ignoring her protest, Will grabs her hand and channels his physical enhancement magic directly into her body. He gives her a confident smile, promising to crush the cultist and be right back. Veronica is completely dumbfounded, caught off guard by his bold move and his vow to protect her. A smirk finally breaks through her surprise as she thinks to herself that she's got some seriously cheeky students on her hands. Veronica agrees to his plan but stops him with a crucial warning. She tells him that the cultist is probably far stronger than he looks. Our boy is stunned, realizing he might have completely underestimated this new enemy. With his hesitation being all the proof she needs, Will grits his teeth and accepts the grim reality. He rockets forward with enhanced speed, leaving Aruto momentarily impressed. But the cultist just smirks, deciding he'll simply have to be even faster. Will materializes, a mana dagger, ready to end this in one clean strike. Their weapons collide in a blinding flash of green and dark energy. To his absolute shock, Aruto effortlessly stops his full power attack. The cultist then counters with a savage kick, sending our boy reeling back. Aruto grins like a maniac, mockingly complimenting our boy on his wonderful talent. Will scrambles back to his feet, but he realizes his last attack did manage to connect. The cultist whines theatrically about the tiny scratch on his cheek, saying it really hurts. Then, with a twisted smile, he channels dark red energy and heals the wound instantly. Veronica, observing from afar, is floored. She senses a calm mana flowing from his red gem, a wavelength just like offensive magic. The horrifying truth is revealed. This psycho is a combat-capable healer, just like Will. Aruto smugly asks if our boy came up with the idea of fighting with healing magic all by himself. He then laughs, admitting he could never have thought of something so brilliant on his own. But even someone like him, he explains, can become powerful by following the twisted teachings of his cult. As he surges forward with overwhelming dark energy, Will is dumbfounded. He realizes his unique combat healing method already existed in this twisted form. He grits his teeth, disgusted by the sheer desperation that must have driven healers to fight with their bare hands. Aruto just smirks, calling our boy a natural-born talent and saying how envious he is of his gift. With a creepy grin, the cultist then offers to introduce Will to that person, the one behind their whole operation. He formally invites Will to join their ranks, but our boy's mind is already screaming hell no. Will stands his ground, declaring he'll never join their trash-tier cult. His eyes blaze red with fury, as he vows he wouldn't join them even if he were reborn. Aruto just sighs, saying it's a shame as a sinister red aura explodes around him. He smashes his mace into the ground, signaling that the time for talk is officially over. The psycho lunges forward with a crazed look, screaming that if Will won't join, hell just have to be eliminated. Aruto brings his mace down with terrifying force, but Will just barely manages to parry the blow. Our boy struggles against the sheer power, realizing this guy's physical enhancement is no joke. His mind races, trying to piece together the puzzle of the cult, their red stones, and their twisted use of magic. He grits his teeth, admitting to himself that there's still way too much he doesn't understand. But one thing is certain, he has to get answers from this psycho if he wants to prevent the coming tragedy. With a burst of speed, Will launches a counterattack, closing the distance in a flash. The cultist dodges with a smug look, almost as if he's toying with him. Aruto coolly admits to himself that at this rate, he's probably going to lose. But then he grins like a maniac, boasting that it doesn't matter because the entire cult has his back. He channels power into his mace, activating a sinister skill called physical feralization. A sinister red light erupts from Aruto's eyes as the forbidden power floods his system. His entire body begins to warp and expand, twisting into a monstrous new form. One of his arms swells into a grotesque, veiny weapon, and he can't help but marvel at this incredible power. Will is dumbfounded, realizing this twisted transformation is on a whole other level from his own healing enhancements. Aruto just smirks, smugly revealing that this is all thanks to the teachings of his glorious cult. He then launches into his villain origin story, explaining how he once lived a meaningless life without purpose. Turns out he was just a trash-tier healer in some magic unit, forced to serve an arrogant snob he despised. He looks at Will with a twisted pity, believing that as a fellow healer, our boy will eventually see the truth. That truth, in his eyes, is that the world is filled with arrogant scumbags who aren't worth the effort to save. And to a lost soul like him, the cult didn't just grant power with their red stone, they gave him a true awakening. Aruto declares that thanks to the cult, his life has finally begun to shine. But Will is having none of it, retorting that whatever twisted awakening he's had, his actions are just plain wrong. He leaps forward, knowing that if he doesn't stop this lunatic, a lot of innocent people are going to die. Will lands a solid blow, but Aruto just grins, completely unfazed by the attack. He smugly explains that it doesn't matter what he does, because his cult says it's perfectly fine. With a single swing of his monstrous arm, he sends our boy flying, smashing him into the ground. Aruto laughs, mocking Will's defeat as proof that his own twisted version of justice will always prevail. Will can't believe it. All this destruction is because of some empty shell of a man. He's suddenly hit with the memories of his master Ren and Professor Veronica, all the people who died because of failures like this. Fueled by a new resolve, Will staggers back to his feet, much to the cultist's surprise. Aruto is completely dumbfounded, thinking that last hit should have finished our boy for good. But Will simply channels his green energy, instantly mending his shattered arm and leg. The cultist can't believe his eyes, wondering what kind of trash-tier monster has this level of recovery. With his head down, Will quietly seethes, vowing that he will never forgive him for this. His eyes flare red as he promises to inflict a pain far worse than a simple death. Before Aruto can even react, Will explodes forward, becoming a green blur of pure rage. He lands a devastating mana-charged punch right into the cultist's stomach, making him howl in agony. Will coldly tells him not to cry over a little punch like that. With a terrifying grin, he declares that he's not even close to being done with him yet. Aruto is paralyzed with fear, unable to comprehend Will's blinding speed as a hand closes around his throat. Will slams the cultist back, his grip like iron as he prepares to deliver another world of pain. He then sends Aruto flying with a monstrous kick, smashing him into a stone pillar. The cultist is left a broken, bloody mess on the floor, completely out for the count. Will scoffs at how quickly the trash-tier mage went down, deciding they'll have to finish this later. His bloodlust finally fades as he remembers the real reason he's here, Professor Veronica. Turns out, while our boy was busy, Veronica was handling the main course, dodging the Octodraco's attacks. She moves like a blur of silver and white, her blade glowing with pure, condensed mana. With deadly focus, she unleashes her ultimate skill, Magic Sword, Flash, slicing the beast apart. With both threats neutralized, the two of them calmly walk past the monster's severed limbs. Veronica coolly asks if he finished his side of the fight, leaving Will a little dumbfounded by her composure. Veronica just shrugs it off, saying the monster's high regeneration was the only reason it took any time at all. Our boy thinks to himself that it's time to get some answers from the trash he left behind. He walks over to the unconscious cultist and gives him a hard slap to wake him up. With a chilling smile, Will looms over the dazed Aruto and says they have a lot to talk about. Before the guy can even process what's happening, Will slams him against a pillar. He presses a glowing blade to Aruto's throat, who is now sweating bullets. Will tells him not to make such a scary face, as if he's not the one causing all the terror. He then clarifies that whether Aruto lives or dies depends entirely on what he says next. Getting straight to the point, Will demands to know everything about the cult and its goals. But the cultist, trying to be brave, declares that believers must never leak information to outsiders. But instead of talking, the cultist grabs the blade and turns it towards his own neck. With a crazed look, he declares that his life is and always will be devoted to the cult. Then, screaming "Long live the cult," he slices his own throat in a final fanatical act. Will is completely dumbfounded. He never expected the guy to actually go through with it. The cultist's soul fades, believing this perfect sacrifice will guide him to his lord's side. But suddenly, his mind feels strangely clear, and he realizes his fatal wound is completely gone. He's in total shock, remembering the distinct pain of the cold blade and the hot blood. Will calmly admits he was surprised by the suicide, saying he underestimated the man's faith. But then our boy hits him with a chilling smile, revealing that he was the one who healed him. The cultist shrieks that death should have been instant, but Will clarifies that almost instant is all the time a master healer needs. The cultist is in absolute denial, screaming that what Will just did is impossible for any normal healer. But our boy just grins, declaring he's far from normal and is on the path to becoming the best in the world. He grabs the cultist, explaining the terrifying flip side. If he can save him from death, he can also torture him on its brink forever. The man starts sweating bullets as the grim reality of his situation finally dawns on him. With a chilling smile, Will puts a blade to his throat, asking if he's finally ready to talk. The cultist realizes he's completely cornered and has no choice but to spill everything he knows. But before he can utter a word, a cold voice commands him to die, and he's suddenly lifted into the air. Hez completely dumbfounded, having no clue what's happening as his body begins to fail. And just like that, the cultist dissolves into a puddle of water right at Will's feet. Will is left completely dumbfounded, staring at the spot where his only lead just vanished. Suddenly, a blood-curdling scream echoes from the shadows, revealing the true summoner writhing in agony. Veronica instantly appears, sword drawn, yelling at Will to get back as the real enemy is revealed. The cultist stumbles away, clutching his head as some unseen force begins to tear him apart from the inside. In a flash of dark energy, the man is violently ripped apart while Veronica shields our boy from the blast. His body withers in an instant, his face frozen in a silent scream as his life force is drained away. Will can only watch in disbelief as the cultist's body collapses into a lifeless heap. He rushes forward, screaming for the man not to die, as his last chance for answers is slipping away. But as he tries to unleash his healing magic, he realizes it's completely useless. The man's soul is already gone. Will is dumbfounded. The cultist's life force was snuffed out instantly by some kind of powerful curse. He's left wondering who could possibly be pulling the strings, a shadowy mastermind with the power to silence their pawns. Veronica checks if he's okay, but our boy can only stare at the corpse, frustrated that his only lead is gone. He blames himself for tagging along and ruining their chance for information, but she tells him the student's safety is all that matters. With the situation contained, she decides it's time for them to head back to Schwarz Academy. As they walk through town, Will feels like a failure, thinking they destroyed the red stone but learned absolutely nothing. But Veronica corrects him, pointing out they now know a cult exists that uses these stones to drive monsters berserk. He has to admit she's right. Compared to his past life, he's definitely making progress this time around. Veronica gives him a curious sideways glance, clearly wondering what's going on inside his head. Will admits that in the end, he's glad he came along for the field training. Veronica reveals she actually insisted on joining because she was worried about him, which is why their academy was the only one with 2 instructors on site. Our boy is stunned, realizing that in this timeline, Veronica sensed the danger and acted on it, something that never happened before. Changing the subject, Will finally asks the question that's been bugging him. How did she ever figure out how to use healing mana for attacks? She explains that coming from a merchant family, she had plenty of chances to observe both healers and attack mages up close. Will finds that answer a little too simple. If that's all it took, magic research would be way more advanced by now. But Veronica just shrugs. She then adds a crucial detail, recalling that she feels like someone told her about the concept when she was very young. His mind immediately races, could that mysterious person have been connected to the cult? But before he can spiral, Veronica snaps him out of it, suggesting they put the heavy talk aside and grab some fresh bread. Will is completely caught off guard, his mind racing with the possibility that the cult has been pulling strings for far longer than he ever imagined. But Veronica, ever the pragmatist, just cheerfully agrees to his suggestion, pulling them back to the present moment. As they enjoy the fresh bread, our boy reflects that even with huge mysteries unsolved, he's finally found a real clue to avert the apocalypse. Of course, the moment of peace is short-lived, as he gets a royal chewing out from the dorm supervisor for leaving without permission. Meanwhile, in a dimly lit office somewhere else, a woman in a frilly dress walks in with purpose. She finds a blonde man at his desk, coughing up blood, a clear sign that his mission was a complete failure. A shadowy snake slithers from his body, a grim messenger telling him that since the last guy failed, his turn has come. The snake then finds its new host, a woman who sighs with resignation, knowing she can't refuse the order. Clutching a glowing red gem, she confirms her loyalty, ready to carry out whatever twisted mission the cult demands of her.